I'm going to call the meeting to order for the Burke County Commissioners Special Meeting for Thursday, May 19th, 2022 at 2 p.m. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you today. Madam Clerk, we have Commissioner Abley, Commissioner Britton, Commissioner Carswell, myself in attendance. Commissioner Taylor should be here, but we'll recognize him when he comes in. Our county finance officer, our county manager, and our county attorney are also in attendance. So thank you, ma'am. I would ask everyone in the audience, please silence your mobile device. And then when you do come before us to speak, if the red light is not on, just please click it and we'll come on, because we are recording this for YouTube purposes. So we want to make sure that your response and questions are heard. So with that being said, the next item is approval of the agenda. Gentlemen, you've had an opportunity to review the agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Abley. All those in favor signify with the uplifted hand. That is 4-0, Madam Clerk. Item number 3, items for discussion. This will be presented by Margaret Pierce, our Deputy County Manager and Finance Director, and this is a Volunteer Fire Department request for tax rate change. So, Margaret, the floor is yours. I'm going to be saying that a lot today.
For a while. I should just move my table
You have
up
some
here.
comfortable shoes on today, because it's it could be a while.
I think so. We have 2 fire departments that have requested increases this year, Ickard Fire and Salem Fire. They have done the appropriate meetings, notices, and votes within their districts and areas, and I will let both of those speak to you if you have questions specifically on their increases. Ickard has Chief Lingerfeld here, if you want to start with Ickard, if you have any questions. Chief?
Good evening. Kenneth Ickard, Chairman of the Board, Ickard Township Fire Rescue. As for reference of the rate increase, on March the 15th, at our Board of Directors meeting, a discussion was held on the increase in calls for service and the decrease in response of our firefighters. Since January the 1st, 2022, we have had 27 calls where we responded with only 1 firefighter or EMT. Many more calls were answered with just 2. Obviously, this is an unsafe practice due to being the first on the scene of an incident where sometimes the situation is not safe. Our dispatchers do their best to let us know when we may be going into harm's way, but sometimes it just happens. During the meeting, we discussed about ways to increase our volunteer response, as we only have the 1 paid firefighter per shift at night and 2 during the day. Many times when the fire apparatus arrives on the fire, there is not enough personnel to place the hoses into operation. Working on the state recommendation of 2 in, 2 out, we try to have enough personnel to where if the firefighters that initially enter structure fire gets into trouble, there will be enough help to go in and get them out. Our total call volume for 2021 was 1,569 calls, with our full-time staff of 4 answering 61% of the total combined individual responses. Our volunteers, totaling 34, accounted for the other 39% of the combined responses. A vote was taken at the March 25th, 2022 meeting to increase the tax rate from .010 to .012 per $100 to provide for 3 more paid personnel. An advertising affidavit was placed in the Morganton News Herald to show notice of a public meeting to be held on April the 25th, 2022 at 7 p.m. at the fire department. This was advertised in the paper on March the 27th and April the 3rd of 2022. At the public meeting on April the 25th, there were 11 resident freeholders present. A discussion was held on increasing the fire tax. Afterwards, a motion was made and seconded to pursue the rate increase and submit a budget to reflect it. We have tried for several years to come up with a solution as to why our volunteers have not just dwindled in numbers, but they are not providing the activity levels needed to provide the quality of service our citizens deserve. And any help from the Board of Commissioners that can be provided will be greatly appreciated. Is there any questions?
Kenneth, thank you. Great presentation. Gentlemen, any questions or comments concerning this?
Kent, you said you had 2 full-time people in the day and 1 at night, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, is that every day of the week?
It tries to be. On weekends, it can change.
Okay.
That depends on part-time.
You answered 1,569 calls last year.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Kenneth, the 3 full-time, now how are they gonna be spread out?
As far as we have 2 stations now, there will be probably 2 at the main station at Hildebrand and 1 at the substation at Ikard. That way, counting the chief, which will be the other paid one at the Hildebrand station. If things change, we may move them in a different area. We can do multiple things as far as a combination between a full-time fireman. What we're searching for is full coverage. If we get to a weekend and we've got a full-time fireman that's working Hildebrand on Friday night, and we get a part-time individual, then he will be at Hildebrand. That leaves the Ikard station empty, as far as we want to be able to man that station also. It'll help quicker response on interstate calls, wrecks. You've got all the schools there, Middlebridge Road, Johnson Bridge Road. Since we have a department on either side of the interstate, it helps in case you do have a huge disaster, because you don't hamper up if equipment can get across the interstate or back and forth. That was the other reason, but without the personnel, a building's just a building.
That's a nice, fire station you opened up down there, so.
Thank you.
that was
We've
good.
been working on
Nice
it for a
ribbon
long
cutting.
time. I'm proud of it.
Should be.
How many trucks you got between the 2 stations?
Excuse me,
How
what?
many trucks between the 2 stations?
Give me a minute to count.
Okay. How many, Bram?
6.
6, okay. What did the 11 residents say when they came to the meeting?
The 11 residents are all for it, as far as we try to open up to full conversation. I personally do not want to do anything that contradicts what we're out to do. Anytime that you ask for an increase of money, especially this day and time, it gets hard. But our citizens and the public deserve a good quality protection and service from the department. And I hate to say it, but as far as volunteer response is down. I joined that department August 28th, 1985, and things have really changed.
How much do you pay volunteers on the call?
They don't get paid.
Oh,
That's why it's volunteer. They only reimbursements you're going to obtain would be like a fuel reimbursement. But that's the reason it's called volunteer.
and they pay for their own training, correct?
Well, we offer training. You know, the state mandates how much training we have to have. Community college does well. They offer the training. So you can get the training at our department or other departments in the county and other locations. So it's not like an individual has to come in. You know, you're looking at a lot of money just to suit an individual up in turnout gear. And then train them, go through the process. We're just trying to get it to where even not so much of a structure fire, but medical or a car wreck or anything. Anytime the public needs us, we can be there and give them what they need. That's what it's for.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
Margaret, question for you. We don't have all the tax rates in front of us here. Can you refresh our memory what the ranges are and what?
It should be in the board packet
Yeah, it's on.
on the page, but I can tell you. Which ones do you want? I've got them right here, but sorry.
Yeah, they're not in that. You can use that.
I've-
I don't have my tablet with me.
Oh, no, sir, they're not in that book. They were in the packet. But I can give them to you. Which ones did you want?
That's fine. I just wanted to refresh my memory on the overall rates.
We have 11 of the 18 that are fire districts that are above 10 cent. And the 10 cent is what they are at currently. I did add that up real quick in case that was a question. And I estimate this at being approximately $130,000 a year increase.
How much, I'm sorry?
About $130,000 depending on collection rate.
Isn't there a state maximum?
15 cent.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any other questions or comments? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
The second station is Salem. They are requesting to go from 7 cent to 10 cent. This would be approximately $140,000 in revenue for them. Chief, are you gonna? And Chief Altry is here to answer any questions you may have on that.
Afternoon, Chief.
Good afternoon. I'm Chief Charles Autry. I also have with me Alan Bird. He's the president of our board of directors, and also board member Larry Lane. You may know him. He also works with the North Carolina Forest Service. As she stated earlier, we've met all the requirements with having a public meeting and publicizing that, and then passing the tax increase request. But I wanted to concentrate on why we need it. Salem has historically had the lowest tax rate in Burke County at 0.7 or 0.07. We're requesting an increase to 0.1. Just some statistics that we were able to pull out. 16 of the 21 rural fire tax districts have tax rates at or over 0.1. This increase would make the annual payment on a $2 million loan, which is what we think at the minimum we're going to have to build a new station. Our current Station 1 is 51 years old. It's been added on to 4 times. The last engine that we bought, we had a special order to keep it short enough to fit in the bay doors because they're taller now. We need to build a new station. We've acquired 2 pieces of property behind our station, burned the houses that were on them for training over the past years, and we'd like to move ahead with building a new station, but we don't have the funds to do that right now. We'll also have to replace one of our engines within the next couple of years. It'll be 30 years old. In the past 6 months, it's been in the shop more than it's been in the station, down at our Station 2. We figured up the taxes, how much this would actually increase property owners on their tax bill. For a $100,000 valuation, it would increase $30 per year. And for $200,000, it would increase $60 per year, $5 per month. So we think it would be reasonable to raise their rate to 0.1. There would only be 4 tax districts that would have a lower rate even then.
Questions for the chief?
When's the last time you had a rate increase? Do you recall?
It's been a long time, well before I was involved with it. Probably about 2008.
That's close. That's good.
Was there anybody that spoke out against the rate increase? I mean,
Yes, we had nearly 20 people at our meeting. There were 3 people that spoke against it. Their general gist of what they were saying was the economy was bad And they didn't think we should raise taxes, with inflation and whatnot. We pointed out that inflation affects the fire department as much as anyone. We've still got to put diesel fuel in trucks and repair trucks and do the things that we need to do, so.
But the vast majority was in favor of, because 3 out of 20, that's, okay. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Yes, sir.
Will that allow for the new fire truck in 2 years, this raise, or will you have to have
Well,
another one between now and then?
we've managed over the years, and it amazes me that they've done this, because I've only been the chief since November, but over the years, they have managed to save $1 million, which is a substantial amount, and it blows my mind that they've been able to do that over the years. But the building itself will likely be over $3 million, and then the new engine will probably be over $700,000. So.
Good, thank you.
But you'll have to plan for the engine, correct?
We'll have to borrow that as well, but, yeah.
Now, just for folks listening, what's the useful life of a new engine now?
Well, at 30 years, it should be replaced and should not be a first out engine. You can keep it as a reserve engine, which we will do. But we have 4 pumper tankers, 2 brush trucks, and a SUV, and a rescue truck.
Do you know how many calls you went on last year?
We've averaged over 700 calls for the past several years. It was slightly lower, I think in 2020, because the county stopped dispatching us with so many medical calls that were likely COVID related, so it dipped down a little bit, but it came right back up. So it's averaged well over 700.
Any other questions, comments? All right. Thank you, sir.
May I add one thing?
Yes, sir.
We do not have full-time personnel. We do have people that cover the stations during the day on days off from their regular jobs. So we have a number of firefighters that work, for example, for EMS or Morgan Public Safety on their days off from there. They cover the fire station for us, but usually that's only, that would only be one person, and it's not every day of the week. It's weekdays when someone is available, so there's some days we have no one there, but also we have currently 44 firefighters, including 3 juniors. So.
And your 2 stations, one going over near the prison, the other one's on 18th South.
Yes, sir.
18th South's the one you take my house on, right?
Yes, sir. And it's our primary station right beside Salem Schools, the one that we'd like to build a new station right back behind it.
Do you have any idea how your response is? Are you able to have at least 2 folks on each call?
Typically, yes. We've been doing very, very well with our response. And during the daytime, it's hard because most of our members work regular jobs and are not in district during the day. They're at their jobs wherever they may be, or of course we have a lot of people that work shifts because they work for other public safety agencies. But sometimes on medical calls, it may not be uncommon to have only 1 or 2 respond, especially in the middle of the night on a medical call. But there are many times we have multiple simultaneous calls and are able to handle those.
Any further questions, comments? All right.
Thank you.
Chief, thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Yes, sir. Gentlemen? We're just looking for a little direction here, so any objections to the recommendations?
Chairman, I'll make a motion to increase both of the rates to what they asked for.
I don't think that's asking for too much.
Okay, do you want to make that in the form of a motion, or is that just form of direction?
In a motion, please.
In a motion? Okay, and all those in favor signify with uplifted hand. Motion carried 4-0. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Perfect. All right, we'll move on to item number 2 fiscal year 2022, 2023 budget explanation of change in items of note. Floor is yours again, ma'am.
That is. So a couple of generic comments. As you read in Mr. Steen's letter, we had over $140 million worth of requests. In his recommendation, there is a total of about approximately $122 million. So obviously, we weren't able to meet all the needs. A lot of careful thought and evaluation went into all the numbers. They're probably not perfect, and we're open to any suggestions, and certainly ready to put in whatever you'd like in changes. We had 57 new positions requested across all the departments, which obviously is significant. We evaluated each one of those before Rhonda Lee left. We were able to meet with some departments that had significant requests, such as DSS had 35 positions requested within their department alone. So we spent several hours with them evaluating those requests and trying to figure out what could be done with those, among other departments that we spoke to. So property taxes are proposed at the current level of 69.5 cents. And this budget for general fund does include a balance appropriation from fund balance of $1,966,625 just to balance the budget. I'll dive in unless you have any other beginning comments you'd like. Okay.
Go ahead and continue.
So general fund revenues, we're going to start there. Property tax has seen a minor amount of growth and really high collection rates, so we're excited that was able to be increased slightly. Sales tax is estimated with a 5% growth over the current actuals, which is concerning in some ways because sales tax has been so high, unusually so. It's a statewide problem that we're all finance people pondering. There's no way to forecast when last year we actually saw over a 17% increase in actuals over the prior year, which during a COVID year and in growing inflation just didn't make sense, but that's what it was. We have
Who
continued.
gave you that number?
Who gave you what number?
5% for sales tax growth.
It is a number that I came up with, and it is because that was talking to my peers across the state, some were doing 2, some were doing 7, trying to find a balance with what normally is a growth and what we're seeing now was where 5% came from.
I spoke to some of our neighbors, and they had phenomenal sales tax growth, and that takes me back when you're saying 5%, so,
It's the projection for next year.
yes.
In the current year, we're running right around 10%,
It's great for this
but we
year,
had
yeah.
1 month that was down to 2%.
Uh-huh.
So I've got 7 months worth of data in for the current fiscal year, and I am concerned there is a bubble somewhere, particularly with inflation going up, that will not continue at that level.
Let me ask you this,
Yes, sir.
inflation or false inflation?
I have no idea. I can only tell you that the Bureau of Statistics is giving the Consumer Price Index up and inflation up.
So you took the cautious road.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, that's what I wanted to know.
Yes.
Those are good points, Commissioner Carswell, and I will say, that's the concerning thing with inflationary pressures we're facing. Obviously, with what I do, you see Walmart, Target is way down this year. Walmart, those are kind of bellwethers and have been, and of course, those consumer staples, when you see the stock's taking a hit because the bottom line's taking a hit, those are, like I said, they're not premium products. They're products that are inflationary protected a lot of times, and even Amazon. And they're getting ready to do a reverse split, and they're having a tremendous, difficult time with their stock price because of inflationary pressure. So I think it is prudent to do the 5% at this point.
Some of what's within that growth has to be the additional cash influx that people received in those incentive payments and the additional child credits in their pocket for those with children at home, $300 a month for the last year. So if you have two children at home, you saw an extra $600 in your house, and people have different philosophies about what to do with that $600, but what we saw as a generic rule was it was spent. Whether they needed to spend it on gas because it was up, or food because it was up, or they found some luxury items, the housing market and the home repair market, as our building inspection permits have testified to. Repairs on homes went through the roof the first 6 months everyone was home from COVID because gentlemen had time to do their honey-do list. We saw tremendous increase in sales at Lowe's Hardware and Home Depot simply because they had the time and they were stuck at home, so why not repair that deck or do that little work and change out something in the house that they had time for. They're not at home anymore, and they don't have the $1,400 incentive or all those different incentive payments that came. I think those are hard to extrapolate out because some people put them away for a rainy day like they might should have. What that's going to change, not having any more of those payments in the coming year, is very hard to quantify. I do feel that's conservative, but I feel like it's right.
And I agree with everything you just said, and I think it's good to go conservative. I was listening to Wayne a while ago talk about food prices. We just take a look at what it is today. We don't have a clue what it might be tomorrow. When he buys his products, everybody's going up, and he said people are adding surcharges to things that he buys. So
We're
I
seeing
understand that it is a guessing game, but I want us to put the best guess that we can. I guess we have to call
I
it
assure
that.
you, many
Yeah.
hours and many different formulas have been put to those numbers,
Right.
trying to determine what was best. I actually had them at a lower percentage and said, I think I'm being too cautious. So I did use 5%, feeling that if we see a standard normal growth in our sales tax pre-COVID, this is the right number.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Sheriff.
Our intergovernmental revenues are down, but that's due to the one-time allocations that are very specific to expenses. Typically, within DSS alone, it's easy to find $1 million in additional COVID funds that were received for energy payments, child care payments. There were special payments to our LINKS children, which is your 13 to 18-year-olds. There were special payments for the 18 to 21-year-olds of up to $2,500 apiece. So that inflated your revenues and your expenses, and they're not there this coming year, at least not that we're aware of yet. All those were added after the budget begins. Sales and services are up slightly due to EMS billings. The collections on those are up a little bit, and with the rate change we made last year, we're more appropriately covering expenditures. We are still not break even. We are in no way. The budget is still near $7 million, and we take in right at $4 million for expenses in EMS. So we are not making money, even though we collected a little bit more. The county is subsidizing that around $2 million.
That money has been billed, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Will we ever collect it, do you think?
The collections run, they're above 90%. I can't come up with the exact percentage off the top of my head. What I'm saying is what it costs us to run that service is still well more than what we charge in fees. The county does not, even using the 125% Medicaid, that's not going to cover the cost when diesel fuel is, even at wholesale, is running us $5 a gallon, and your trucks get about 8 miles to the gallon. That's the kind of vehicles those are. So you would have to significantly increase those or drop your services in order to ever get EMS to a break-even point. That was just one example. I was trying to say that even though it's up, it doesn't mean, I don't want anyone to think we're making a profit.
Yes.
Some general notes on the budget. The Elders, which is our state retirement, local government employee retirement system contribution, the state went up another 1.25% this year in order to have the actuarial funded amounts. Inflation is running at 8.2%. The CPI for workers, which is what we gauge off of normally to do COLA is running at 8%. Often you see those about 2% apart. They no longer are. They're running together. It's different factors in the consumer price index for workers versus inflation. And unfortunately, we weren't able to fully fund the consumer price index this year. We are proposing 4% within our budget. Some of that was discussion with peer groups, but there are some doing more. I've heard as much as 8% in some counties, but we just didn't feel that we could do that. We tried to do the 4% and at least get some money back to our people that are seeing such a high inflation rate. In talking with the commissioners and employees, department heads, we really did an evaluation in the past 4 months of pay types, what those mean. We have, the communications department was under a pay type called fixed pay fluctuating work week. That is a legal type of pay to do for people that work 12-hour shifts in 24/7 organizations. And what that means is they were paid an even amount per week based on typically working the same schedule. And they had set schedules. We looked at that because there is concern that what happens in that is your first week you're typically working 2 days. One day, excuse me. Your next week you're working 3 days. So what it looks like is, well, you only work 24 hours this week, but then you work 72 the next week. So you end up, you'd have these really lopsided checks. So fixed pay meant they got the same pay for each week so that it leveled out. Then at an overtime at 40, once they hit the 40 hours, it actually did a calculation at a half time instead of time and a half overtime. So we went in and recalculated and reworked what would it mean to bring them all to a more standard 40-hour, which means if you work over 40, you get time and a half. So we have built into the budget in order to change their pay method back to a standard 40-hour work week scheduling for pay type. That's an increase of approximately $50,000 in their budget. The thing that will make a biggest difference there is how much overtime they work. So if you pick up an extra shift in your short week, it's not too much. But if you pick up an extra shift in your heavy week, that would be a lot more. So it's something that the Director Hall is going to manage and look at closely when he's evaluating who needs to pick up a shift and who can pick up a shift and not. So, but we did propose that change within this budget. The other change we are proposing, and again, we are really trying to figure out countywide, how do we retain staff? How do we recruit staff? Obviously, there are gaps in law enforcement and detention, but the other one that really comes up consistently in staff studies here and other counties that I spoke with and in exit interviews is comp time. Comp time is unique to government where it says if you work over 40 hours in a normal 40-hour week, unless you're specified different, you don't get extra money in your check. You get hours built up to use someday or for the county to pay out if you leave. Compensated later. Always paying it out. The county has to pay that at some point. But what people want and need today is money in their pocket. So we are proposing to go to no longer having comp time for non-exempt hourly staff and simply paying them as they work. A lot of that is already being paid out by the county at some point or other. All of it is being paid out by the county at some point or other, either in time off or in cash when they leave. There would be an impact to the budget in that automatically you know you're paying all of it out instead of any of it being paid in the future just in time taken off versus vacation being used later. So we do anticipate an increase to budgets of approximately $200,000 countywide for this, but it is a significant change in philosophy that I think department heads, when we spoke to them, really feel like it will make a difference to them on being able to retain employees and keep employees, particularly in some of our jobs such as maintenance workers, where it might be one thing for social workers to all be government, but your HVAC and your electricians and your skilled laborers like that can go to the private sector and get all that overtime. Well, this way, hopefully that makes us a little more on a level playing field with some of those other types of businesses. Holidays are, now you do by the way, have departments that already pay overtime. That would be your sheriff's office, the jail, EMS, and 911. They were already paying overtime. This won't change that part. It'll just make all the rest of the employees receive overtime. Because that was another challenge for us, that you had your neighbor getting it and you not. So we want to go to being everybody's the same on that.
So every department in the county will be under this plan.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
The other is holidays. Everyone doesn't get holiday pay the same week the holiday happens. Certain departments that are 24/7 have what's called floating holidays. And it means if you don't work on the holiday, you're going to get paid for that holiday right then. But if you work on that holiday, you're going to get a floating holiday, 8 hours set aside for you to use down the road. And if you don't use it within a prescribed amount of time, you lose it. That's another challenge that we just felt like was, again, not very equitable across the board. This one has really no cash impact because most people were using it, but we did have a few that lost it. So overall, you were paying it out anyhow. It'll just mean you'll get paid straight. It doesn't create any overtime situation because it's not physically worked. If you work it, you can't work twice. We want to pay everybody the day that holiday happens. Again, deal with it the same for all employees instead of these ones that are in those 24/7 departments being treated differently and having to figure out a day to take off or, oh gosh, I'm going to lose it. This treats them more fairly.
That's department-wide, county-wide.
Countywide, department-wide. I can tell you some of these changes our payroll person is extremely excited about, not having to figure out which department's which. That will have a much more level playing field, especially if you change departments. There's things you could lose if you go from one department to the next. Well, now you won't. It's all the same. The third cycle of the pay plan is included this year. This is the last of our second set of doing a third, a third, a third. We do have those figures calculated in here, and we'll talk later about those. You received the printout of what pay grades were recommended for changes. This entire study was done by our outside consultant. He does counties our size and all surrounding counties. There's a formula to calculate what the average should be, and if we're not there at the market average, then that's where he proposes the changes in that. The health insurance, we actually have had another, knock on wood, reasonable year so far, claims-wise, and we propose no increase to dependent insurance to try to save, again, that money coming out of our employees' pockets. We have some reserves that we can utilize this year to not have to raise dependent insurance, and we would like for you to see that. We are saying we do need to raise it on the county side, $25 an employee, which equates to approximately $300 a year per employee. So a small increase to offset what we need for the actuarial amount for next year.
Margaret, let me jump back, please, ma'am, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, to some of the adjustments in the pay grades. It appears that in the building inspection department, is the market rate gone up
Significantly.
significantly? Because I see we're asking for increases of different pay grades, like 2 pay grades, 3 pay grades. So buildings has gone up in the market.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
That is another one similar to what we discussed recently about environmental health that's being headhunted.
All right, thank you.
Another benefit that wasn't countywide was education benefits. And we want to have that be equitable. There was only the sheriff's office, the jail that received benefit for having certain degrees, extra certifications, and we want to make sure that all departments, if there is a certification that applies, or there is a degree, advance, a person could receive and does receive, we want to make sure there's a mechanism to reward them. For example, we recently had a social worker who received her master's in social work, and unfortunately, our county policy didn't allow for any type of pay increase, even though that's a tremendous benefit to us to have someone with that background, skill level, and they can now, as a master's degree, supervise interns And currently, the director's the only person with a master's. He was having to supervise all interns, and they couldn't have very many because he can only supervise so many people, especially in his position as a director. So we want a mechanism in place that all departments, it would vary depending on what you need. For example, a master in social work and finance, they would not receive an increase because that's irrelevant to finance. It would have to be relevant to the department they're in and relevant to the county for them to receive an increase. We want to work with the new HR director whenever they come to specify exactly what that would look like in every department, because it could be different. These will be done on a case-by-case basis and by the HR director and the county manager evaluating whether there is benefit to the department and what that means.
Margaret, thank you. How much flexibility are we looking at?
Within those, I would hope something like a master's degree is a 5% pay increase.
5 to 10 possibly?
It's, yes. I mean, certainly that's common in other departments and other areas that we looked at, that receiving a master's degree in social work, similar to a teacher receiving national certification, you get rewarded for that extra effort you put in and what that means to your clients and people that you're working with. So we want that opportunity to be able to reward them.
Well, we talked about this, and I think it's a great idea, so, thank you.
Scott?
Yes, sir.
I think probably one of the most positive things in this whole thing is that our employees are going to get their overtime at the appropriate time instead of having to wait and wait and wait. I think that's probably going to build more support than anything else we could do.
I agree with you, Commissioner Abley. I think it's a recruiting tool too. Every one of these things, making it fair and equitable across departments. Of course, I know how much work this is going on behind the scenes, but we can say we want this done, but it's easy to say, but you having to go and compare all these different plans, and I know we've all had conversations about different departments that say this isn't equitable, this is not equitable for these folks, but so far, great.
Thank
So
you.
I agree
Thank
with you
you.
100%.
And we still have sheriff's deputies taking advantage of their degrees and getting the
Yes.
bonuses with those, correct?
Yes, we have those and some at the jail that are receiving the education benefits already. And that was something that, as you were able to put that into place for the detention officers last year, it really became a part of another conversation. We've had some registered deeds. They've gotten certified and taken a several-hour exam they have to take and pass that. And when we talked to Ms. Norman, it was, we need to be able to reward these people for going out and getting more for us and being able to serve our citizens better. And so we're excited to be able to put this in place with your permission, these changes.
Well, and obviously, we've talked about in different departments, not only recruitment, but retention. And with these policies in place, I think it's going to be a lot more attractive to our employees moving forward.
We hope so. The other thing that I didn't note here is something that I spoke briefly, I think, with Chair Mulwee, that's kind of near and dear to my heart, is I think we need to be doing more recognition of our employees. And I think we need an annual countywide event hosted by you five up there for us, and I've included funds in the budget. We've included funds in the budget for that to happen. We want to propose that, working with HR, we start doing a monthly recognition of employees that reach their 5-year marks, 5, 10, 15, 20. We've got some different ideas of what that might look like, and maybe at the beginning of the meeting in that quarter that we would have some cookies and punch, and you gentlemen would be able to present them with certificates. We're looking at some nice pins with the seal to have the year if you reach your 10-year mark or something like that. Some other small award that you could give for them, and I think this is something that you brought up we see in other places, and we feel like it's important to thank them. People don't stay at jobs as long as they used to, and I think it's really important to recognize if someone gets to 20, 30, any of those years, it's really nice. I mean, we want to make sure they know we appreciate it. And I know you guys appreciate it, so we wanted you to have that opportunity.
And we talked about that, and that's a great thing great, once again, for bringing that to us. I know the city's done that for quite some time, and it is appreciated by the employees, and I think having some type of event, whatever that looks like, we'd love to do.
I hope you can hear that this was an employee-focused year. that a lot of the things we were really focused on and want to make sure was included was things for our people. We couldn't do everything that was out there, but the things for our people were real important to us to get included in working with the manager and Rhonda before she left. And she and I have been on this for a couple of years, actually, and just really wanting to do different things and realizing that when we had a minute, this was what we needed to figure out a way to fund to do the right thing for people. So, okay, moving into your departments, let's start with aids and donation. And if you're going through the book, I don't know what page it'd be in the PDF, but within the actual book, it is. Unless you have any revenue questions, I'll move to expenses. Page 9. So within aids and donations, in speaking with the manager, what was done was funding at last year's level, whatever that was. If you feel like there's changes we need to make there, we will leave that to your discretion. If there's questions about the request, I'm happy to answer those. There were two departments that received, outside agencies that received one-time money last year and respected your wish on that. But if there's changes you want to make, you just need to let me know. Foothills Conservancy got the one-time money for the Oak Hill Park. And Friends of the Fontaflora Trail received the $30,000 as startup money to get a director on board and to move forward. The Arts Council was looking for additional money for our operations and money for capital, $25,000 to try to give them some more money toward renovating the building they're going into. Debbie Jones did respond that she appreciated your partnership and support when she knew the recommendation was $8,000. Burke React was looking for additional money for radios. You know, we've looked at a couple grants. We're still trying. I think that when we have our ARP conversation, if you want to do anything there, that's an option. But also just trying to figure out, they do need the radios, and we'll have some challenges getting those in place. Burke Rescue Squad was the same, particularly the radios. They were looking for additional money for radios and concerns on operational expenses for their increase. Burke Recovery is such a partner in all of our substance abuse issues, and they were looking for additional funds for all of those programs. Burke United Christian Ministries was new this year. It's the first time I had a request from them, and they were requesting assistance in providing programs to citizens. Conflict resolution, the increase was to provide more time in the 3 mediation courts that they provide services in. We did also receive letter of support from, I believe, the DA's office and the probation office. I believe that's great. Foothills Conservancy was looking for $200,000 for Oak Hill Park to assist in starting to get something built out there and potentially put in a lot of nice amenities at that park. They have a great plan. It sounds like it will take several years to put into place, but they were hoping that you would put in a significant portion for that. Foothills Regional Airport asked for the same funds as the prior year. Friends of the Fontaflora Trail requested $30,000 for a 3-year commitment. That was in order for them to start building up some funds and continue to promote the trails and potentially build some trails with that 3-year commitment. Good Samaritan asked for the same amount as current and hopes to continue the services they've been providing to the citizens. Hickory Regional Airport asked for the $4,000. That supports the tower primarily, the operations and upkeep on it. History Museum had asked for $30,000. They're looking to do some repairs and potentially hire an architect, where they used to have some members that had those skills. They no longer do, so they were hoping for some assistance there. The Reason requested the same as last year, the spay and neuter grant and the $5,000 approximately in straight assistance. Vedic had requested the $25,000 that they received in prior years, although in the 21-22 budget they received $5,000, so that was what was recommended there. Are there any areas there you'd like to talk about?
Gentlemen, I got a couple of ideas, but I want to see what y'all have. Any questions about this particular area?
Mr. Chairman, the 2 areas that the Arts Council and the History Museum, we've discussed those on many times through the ARP funds. Are we still exploring the possibilities that we might be able to do something with them with ARP monies? Or what do you think?
There is a caveat in the ARP money that nonprofits that are simply servicing, unless they're contracting with us for a specific service, cannot be funded. But we did find out that a arts council or a history museum could be simply funded. You can do things that do not have to be under a contract of services with those two types of organizations. So your long answer, short answer is yes, they can be funded under ARP for this.
Okay, that's, if we can do that, then I'm good with leaving this. We'll deal with those, with ARP monies. Is that?
I will make that note.
No, I think, Mr. Britton, you kind of read my mind on both those, but especially the History Museum. So if we do ARP money, because you and I talked about the History Museum, or I mentioned it to Brian, that, you know, is there a specific use the ARP monies have to be used for if we grant them some access to those funds? I mean, is it specific to a program, or can they say,
It is
I want to
not,
bring an architect in and redesign this building?
that should be fine. Everything I've read says that should be fine. It's
So there-
unusual that those two types of organizations have been caveated out in the final rules that they don't have to be the same as the rest. All your other nonprofits have to be under a contract for a specific service that meets the specific requirements under ARP for various allowed services. But art type organizations and arts do not. Arts and history.
With those two organizations, would you feel the stringent requirements that are upon as far as audits, auditing the books, is that going to be too onerous for those two organizations or no?
ARP requires that I sit down with them, if we fund them, and do an evaluation of their internal controls, their bookkeeping, their audit procedures and what they go through, and any federal filings that they've done. I'm required to review all of those and make a determination of where they fall on a scale, whether they're high risk, low risk, medium, and based on where they fall is what we would be required to continue doing to evaluate them on an ongoing basis during the funding process.
So you would feel comfortable with that? Okay.
Yes, sir.
So, great question.
I want to support what Commissioner Britton has said and done here. I feel really guilty that we sold that piece of junk building to the museum for $1. I've had lost some sleep over that because it was terrible, and we give it to them for $1 and not helped anywhere. And poor old Judge Sid fell off the roof of it trying to work on it, you know. So it just I'm glad we're able to do that with ARP monies. For $1, they were.
Haven't been so happy since I took a tour of it with the gentleman the other day, and it is in pretty far disrepair, so they do need some help with that, and obviously, so I think both those organizations could be helped. Any other specifics on this category, gentlemen? I've got two others I'm gonna bring up, but wanted to defer to y'all first. Margaret, vet export.
Yes, sir.
You know, we used to do 25,000. It's down to 5. You know, I think it would show our commitment to vet if we not go back to even if we don't go back to the 25, but go back to 10. Every municipality is involved with VETIC now. That all the way down to Longview have made a financial commitment. Glen Alpine, I don't care how small the municipality is, and I think, you know, we can lead by example, because it is an economic driver, and an economic arm, because we've seen the numbers. We get a lot of bang for our buck for that, and they supply loans that are non-traditional that I send a lot of referrals to, actually. I've probably sent half a dozen referrals to in the last year. So I think that would be my recommendation. Just maybe not go back to that original, but make double our commitment for the coming year. And the other one is, Foothills Conservancy, and we're all familiar with the great work that Foothills Conservancy does. It's well-respected, statewide, region-wide, nationwide. They do a tremendous job, and they really have preserved a lot of property, and I think with the Oak Hill Park, it would behoove us to make a commitment to that in some form or fashion. Maybe not the 200,000. I mean, go big or go home. I know when you make the ask, but at least show a commitment, because we've seen some tentative plans on what that looks like. That's going to be a tremendous benefit for that part of the county, and maybe able to incorporate that obviously down the road into Fauna Flora Trail, which will also benefit us. And so the interconnectivity would be, I think, a boon for the county, because we've been champions of green spaces and outdoor activities. Whatever that number looks like, 25, 50,000, I don't know. I'm willing to take some suggestions, but I would think, gentlemen, in my viewpoint, that we make some type of commitment to them for that moving forward. Any objections, thoughts on Vedic or that, gentlemen? Commissioner Abley? Commissioner Britton?
I'm certainly good with the change to, certainly good with the change to the, to Vedic. I agree. I think they're doing a good work. Foothills, I'm not the 200,000, but, some good faith number, I think.
Even if it's like 25,000, something that show our commitment.
You tell me the number and I'll put it in.
I'll see
Mr.
what the other
Carter?
guys.
I can do with the Vedic for 10. Kind of like Jeff, the Conservancy raises a lot of money on its own, and has a lot of support, and I understand that we should be supporting. 200,000 is way out of range for us. I'm even thinking 25 might be out of range. I may be in the 10,000, to start with, and then maybe look like it costs, keeping in mind the route that we want to take of being conservative. I mean, it would pain me to give a whole lot of, but I understand what you're trying to say. And I agree with it 100%, but maybe the number for me may be 10.
Yeah, and I feel like we've got a lot of things on the drawing board, Parks and Recreation. And in the sense, I see this as competitive is not the right word, but I think our folks might see it as our money went somewhere else, and we got a lot of things we need to be doing. That's, I guess, would be my biggest concern.
Would you be in favor of the 10,000 that Commissioner Carswell? Oh, okay. All right. Margaret? So what I'm hearing the commissioners say, obviously with going back to Burke Arts Council and the History Museum, we're going to look at some extra money for them through ARP, and then Foothills Conservancy will, because we don't have those plans in front of us, so I think it'd be a good faith to, as fellow commissioner said, well, let's make a good faith and put our foot forward and commit 10,000, and we can go back and revisit that at another time, and then Vedic, move that from 5 to 10,000.
I was trying to look real quick and see, I believe it's a multi-year proposed, that the 200,000 was going to do our commitment toward everything, and I think I was trying to find the number of years it was going to take them to get there. That's what I was looking for real quick,
Okay.
Sorry. But 10,000 is what you're saying for Foothills and 10,000 for Vedic.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you want these considered ongoing at this time, or you'll reevaluate next year on the Foothills?
I would say we would reevaluate. We can go up or down that way instead of having it just say static.
Yes,
You agree with that, gentlemen?
okay,
I do, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you.
thank you. I try to keep it all up here, but some of it falls out. Okay, the next area is animal services. You'll see an increase overall of $70,625. There were 2 more positions for animal care requested, and in talking with Caitlin, you know, we certainly recognize how important they are. She did understand if they couldn't be funded, but it's something we know as we get toward, at some point in the future, a new building, we know we probably will need more staff. At that point in time. They are using volunteers very effectively and do a great job with that. All of the positions in that department are in the pay study. When we get to that section, we can talk about the impact. There was a request for an F-350 truck, a trailer, and replacement truck boxes. We are looking to see if there's a 350 truck that might be surplus from another department that could be utilized. We recommended the trailer because right now they're borrowing one. And then the replacement truck boxes relate to some legislation that has not passed, that if it passes, we will be back about that. But basically, this new legislation is going to require air-conditioned, heated areas for the animals when we pick them up. I understand it's been proposed before and came back again in the recent session, and it hasn't gone anywhere in months. It's been tabled somewhat, I think, down there.
Do all the air conditioners and heaters work in all our vehicles across the fleet?
I don't know. I remember riding in the back of a pickup truck to Pennsylvania one time. It was a little cool. So we certainly want to take care of them, but at that point we would come back. We did not recommend that at this time since the legislation hasn't passed. They requested $250,000 set aside for the building, and we continued the $5,000 funding that's been in the last several years. Hopefully, if we can reval next year, may bring some changes to our budget process and philosophy that perhaps we can get to where we're setting aside significant amounts for buildings. But at this point, we're still playing catch up on so many buildings and trying to keep them going. It's hard to set aside $250,000 for this when we've got roofs falling in on other buildings. So we've had to try to balance that. But we did put the $5,000 again towards set aside. Any questions or things there?
Gentlemen, any questions, comments?
So just for my clarity's sake, Margaret, the salaries line that we see here, does that include, is that just the pay study changes, or does that include any new additional staff?
No, no additional staff. That's the overtime and the pay study.
Okay, gotcha.
And Nicola?
And COLA, excuse me, and COLA.
Right.
Mr. Chairman, I would like us to continue to think, we did make a request to the General Assembly for a one-time donation for animal services. We have not been denied that request yet. We asked for $3 million, and it appears that we may get $1.5 million out of that 3. So we need to keep that in mind, that might come to us sometime before too long.
So y'all are, at this point, and that's a good point, Commissioner Carswell, for bringing that up. So y'all are comfortable with just continuing the 5,000, you don't want to up that at this point, because we don't have a decision on those monies. Okay. Any other questions or comments on this? All right, we'll move on.
Building inspections, you'll see a significant change in the salary line. Part of that is starting 2 years ago, I get behind. The state required us to start reporting annually what did we take in building permit revenues and exactly what did we show in our audit as expenses. And within that process, it looked like we had more revenue than expenditures, but we weren't putting any of the administrative costs in this department. We were only putting the 3 inspectors. And in talking, we feel like at least one of the administrative salaries needs to be in here for the admin assistant that does the permits and the scheduling and the collections and all that, so that we were more clearly reflecting that we are not having an excess of revenues. We have expenditures that weren't tracked in this, and this will clarify that. It also includes one additional position. An additional building inspector was requested. With permits continuing to go up, and up, it's a challenge to keep up, and we want to encourage the building process and not slow it down and have delays in because we only had 3 staff members and maybe one's sick and one's on vacation, and you could end up in a bind. So we strongly believe we need a fourth building inspector added to the staff. We weren't able to fund the additional second administrative person they requested, though. This does again include overtime, cost of living, and that position, and the pay plan. Their pay plan change was, as you pointed out, they had some significant jumps, but that is an industry that is seeing that.
And we're still using technology in the field to do a lot of our work now instead of coming back and forth, traveling.
Yes, that is my understanding. I'm not out in the truck with them, but I am told that. And this does actually include a vehicle for that additional position as well. Yes, they each need their own vehicle, truck to be able to go out to job sites. So this department as a whole, you do say $168,000 increase, and that is it. A lot of it is that position, but there's also that transition. So you'll see a correlating reduction in community development's budget for that one position we moved. Under the Burke County Schools, they did request a $500,000 increase, $246,000 for operations and $254,000 for nurses. It's recommended at the current level, and we're requesting that because they rolled $509,000 to fund balance last year of the county dollars they didn't need in what we gave them last year, we're asking them to use that to fund these. The $246,000 was expansion programs somewhat. They gave a list of those. And then, again, the $253,000 is the nurses.
Gentlemen, questions, comments? Okay. Move on to communications.
Communications has an increase of $294,000. They did request a position to do background checks and recruiting, and we feel like with the recruiter we have on staff with HR that they could step in and assist with some of what they need. They're in a much better place, I think, staffing-wise right now than they had been, so I think that sort of leveled out their request as well. And again, this includes that pay method change from fixed pay to the standard 40-hour work week. That is a piece of this. They're also, I have to remember who's in the pay plan. They are in the pay plan. All telecommunicators were in there, and all of those positions did receive either a 1 or the supervisors received a 2 pay grade increase. There any questions on that section?
Gentlemen, questions on communications? And we also, like I said, you have your job classification description here, and she mentioned the pay grade upgrades on those as well.
The next,
We'll go on.
sorry. The next is community development and planning. Under this section, you see a decrease of $20,000. Obviously, I said one position moved out. There was a request for a trail planner that was not recommended. I think that we talked some about that, but with the 57 positions requested, it was just trying to prioritize all of those on what overall would be the most bang for our buck to the citizens. We weren't able to recommend that one at this time, and the corresponding expenses with that were not included as well. They had a vehicle in last year and a couple other one-time expenses that won't be there in the coming year as part of the decrease as well. And they are planners and zoning administration are in the pay study as well. In the county manager, or excuse me, cooperative extension, I jumped ahead. You'll see increases $74,945. They had requested a 100% county-funded position to assist with 4-H and some other programs, and that was not recommended at this time. And there's a portion of the increase in their department that's obviously due from the salary benefits from the state of North Carolina. Whatever they do, we have different percentages based on the position that we fund under all of those. There is one fully funded county position in there as well. They had requested a passenger van for their programs. They've requested it for several years, tractor to do some things outside, and approximately $10,000 in furniture replacements for a couple of offices. We did include the passenger van. We think that's important to keep their programs going, and what vans they have now need to be surplused. They are not what we want to send back out with students in them or anyone. But the other items were not included.
Recommended, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Any other-
42,500.
Any other questions on cooperative extension? All right.
County manager's area, you will see a increase of 45,795. Within this, one of the significant line changes is the retirement line, and we did estimates based on Mr. Steen's retirement with the state, and there will be a payment due to them to fully fund his retirement. It's required by the state, and nothing we can do about that. It is approximately $98,000 that was included for that. Otherwise, the salary and benefits are continued and at the current level for the other 6 months, and then whatever you let us know later, we will make whatever adjustments are needed at that time. Court system, unless there's questions? I'm going to keep going unless y'all stop me. How's that? Okay. Court system was funded at the amount they requested. They have, of course, the jury commission payments are every other year, so that came out, and they requested less in program supplies, so we funded what they're at their requested level. Debt service is going down, $222,000. That's the standard reduction for interest particularly, and then a couple of principal payments go down as well.
And when do the schools pay off?
Which the
Drawn and Patton? Next year?
26,
It's 26, that's
25.
correct.
sorry, in my book. Here.
Margaret, you want us to give you a table so you can sit down instead of standing and have a little more space?
I did wear comfy shoes. They might not look like it, but they are. Thank you. It would help to have a table to set my stuff on, so when you ask a question, I've got it. That would be awesome. 25, 26. Yes, those both pay off.
The 25, 26.
25, 26, that fiscal year is when those two refundings that were done, they reworked the loans in 2013. DSS, you see a decrease of $570,000. As I said, 35 new positions were requested and 1 reclassification. 5 positions are recommended and the reclassification. We are well aware that they have needs and we need to get our ratios up, but it was a challenge to fund anymore. Like I said, we did meet for several hours. You bring the rest of my stuff. To them, some of the positions obviously would have some state funding tied to them, but a lot of those programs are capped, so they would not have additional revenue necessarily with them. It's a process we go through. There's a state template. We put the positions in and try to figure out which will happen. So this was certainly acknowledging. I know when I met with their staff there, the director and several of their management, that some of the positions they know were for down the road, just making it clear that we understand that they have those needs, but they recognize they couldn't all be funded in the same year.
What's driving the positions for them?
Sir?
What is driving the positions for them?
Clients.
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 It's not,
I mean,
not additional new programs from the state, it's just the.
There is one new additional program called, on long-term care. Used to be that you could cap out the amount of people you had on long-term care based on the dollars you got from the state. The state took away the cap. You're now required, you don't have a waiting list anymore. I believe it starts in July 1, that from here on out, they'll need to service all those clients. There is no additional funding that I'm aware of coming with that, and that's two of the positions that are recommended are for the long-term care section.
If you might get your breath right here, I want to go back to Mr. Britton, Commissioner Britton, and see if he can enlighten us as to the increase in clients and what can we expect, if you can enlighten us on that.
We've seen over the course of the pandemic, numbers of clients continue to increase. You know, almost monthly, I ask, when should we expect this to decrease? And the answer continues to be, we don't. It's, you know, the federal government's changing rules, states changing rules. They've waived a lot of things throughout the pandemic. Some of those waivers are coming to an end, but we still have not seen any decline in numbers. Folks are still staying on the roll. So I wish I could say we were going to see 3,000 people go off the rolls, but with the way the rules are at the moment, it does not appear that is happening.
So what's driving the increase here? Mental health issues or drug issues or
Well,
parents or?
I think, of course, Child Protective Services continues to be an area of heavy activity. Drugs, but when you start going back to the source of you know, why do folks have trouble in these areas? Almost always you come back to drugs, a problem with mom
I
and
think
daddy.
that's what we heard, yeah. That the substance abuse filters down and it's creating a lot of the challenges because, thank you, they're trying to help the parents, they're trying to help the children. The numbers aren't changing on how many they're serving. Unfortunately, it goes up. They're taking children in the middle of the night, they're getting calls. That's some of it. But the changes in the programs, or what we heard from that staff, was a big piece, Commissioner Carswell, that when the government goes, well, I know the income cap used to be this, but now we're going to move it up $20,000. Well, that's a significant additional portion that they're now having to serve. We say temporarily, but it's hard to pull that back once you move it. So we're concerned that it could continue as well.
And we are, I think, as commissioners concerned about, I mean, we're pushing $20 million here. And that will hit us probably quicker than we think it's going to. And that scares me as to how we need to prepare for the future at DSS. You know, we're looking at, you know, we need to build a building. If the clientele keeps increasing and we have to have many more people in the building too, this is going to be a huge expense for us in the near future,
Right.
which it already is.
Right now, in this budget, it's estimated it's a little over $6 million of the county funding portion of it. And that's just what it is. I mean, it's a challenge. And I think Corey's concerned there may be a few more positions that are really desperately needed than just the 5 that were done. And I respect that absolutely, that it's just hard to know what to do and where to go with that. Income, the energy was one of the big places that they had challenges because energy used to be in the winter. You needed help paying your heating bill. Well, energy's now 90 degrees out, it's summer too. So where they used to be able to do temporary staff just for a few months in the winter to help them get by with that high influx of costs, and I see Commissioner Britton, yeah, it's that load has changed. They're basically now doing energy year round. And one of the COVID type fundings that came out was where we had LEAP, your low income energy assistance. Now we have LEWAP, which is your low income water assistance. So they took on also doing water temporarily. Again, we haven't been told we'll get a new allocation of funds for that, but it's not unanticipated that that's going to continue.
When you say temporary support, what does that really mean?
We hire some contract people to come in and try to assist with simply processing those applications. You get the information with the energy companies and the client information, and someone's got to sit there and throw that into the computer to see how much they qualify for. There's different caps as far as how much you can put on certain types of bills, $300, $250. And then if the allocations from the state change, well, you got to go back and contact those people and say, guess what, you qualify for more. Can we still help you? Checking on cutoffs. It's not just give me your bill and walk away. It's more.
And the challenge with using those temporary people, though it can kind of help you on the front end, you're constantly training those people.
Yeah.
the state's got a rule book this thick, and you gotta be sure every I is dotted and every T is crossed. If you don't, they come in and audit you, and then you spend months making up for a $10 mistake. And, so, the temporary help is sort of
It's a Band-Aid.
it's a
And it's
Band-Aid
not a
good
good
on
one.
one side, but the more they have increased these programs from being, 3 or 4 months to now they're stretching almost year round, it's not a temporary problem anymore. It's, you need staff to deal with it constantly throughout the course of the year.
One of the 5 positions is a full-time energy person. And the state only gives you a certain amount of funds for the administration of it, but there's no way around it in order to do it and take care of getting the funds out there. So one of the 5 is just a full-time energy person to do that, an income case maintenance worker.
Mr. Chairman,
to-
if I may, I want to go back to Commissioner Britton one more time. Where are these people coming from? We sat here a day or so ago, and everybody said that the population is going down. Is our current population now using more drugs, or do we have more people coming into the county that are coming into the system?
I don't think you see more people coming into the county. Obviously, if you look at substance abuse, it's increasing. I think we had seen some good headway just prior to the pandemic with substance abuse, but I think we've lost all that and are continuing to lose even still. But again, part of what's driving the numbers is all the rules that have changed in the past 12 to 24 months. Income limits, who's eligible. It's just been so much easier in a number of ways for folks to come home to the rolls at DSS.
Are we doing okay here with what you're looking at?
Well, I don't see the exact positions. I'm very certain that Corey and his staff is, if 5 positions is all, I understand what you're saying, Margaret. He's probably very concerned.
It is, social worker 2 for early pregnancy planning and assist with visitation. One of the challenges, sorry, hold on.
Just think about this. If you're in charge of a foster family, you got, just say you're a worker and you're dealing with 4 or 5 families, and there's, each one's got a child, and you've got to, in the course of your week, you've got to do all of your required paperwork, but at the same time, you may have to be certain that that child sees its mother, who may be in 3 counties somewhere. So you may lose a half a day assisting getting that child, seeing that it sees its parent and back, or you may sit in court half a day. And so just dealing with, from the children aspect and keeping the required, the state says, that child's got to see its mother X number of hours. And it's that employee's responsibility to see that happens wherever that is. So it can just take a huge amount of time. And so managing that number of cases with just the physical aspects of moving and getting those people to where they need to be, it just eats up, all your time.
And the very first position is just to do the visitations. This position would literally be a social worker 2, simply to do the visitation pieces. And the social worker of the case, they have a great plan that how often they would step in to be a part, so they're not out of touch with that visitation, but a lot of the travel time and a lot of the sitting in court just waiting will be taken care of by this position. We certainly heard him and understood how important that would be to assist. One is a full-time energy worker instead of seasonal or temporary of any kind. One is a social worker 3 to assist with the foster care and the number of cases that just continue to go up, and up. The state average, the state recommends a caseload of 15 per worker. We're at 18. So this is to try to pull some of those numbers down, and it still won't really get the ratio in the right place, but again, trying to do our best. And then one is an income case maintenance worker to assist with the demands of the new House Bill 630 for long-term care, and trying to make sure that We're now having to do the monitoring and all the audits required by the Division of Medical Assistance, and then taking care of getting the people off the wait list that we're no longer allowed to have. And the other position is a processing assistant, and the reason for that is the long-term care section has no clerical, and they're spending a good bit of their time simply doing the paperwork piece, and this was to free them up and assist with more face-to-face client time for them, where this person can do the simple clerical work. And we're hopefully feeling like we're putting 2 workers in the field instead of just the one recommended, because you're going to free the rest of the staff up to get back out in the field, hopefully 40 more hours a week over those. So those were the 5 that were recommended. Again, certainly more. I can tell you, I have something on all 35. I mean, they're all critical, absolutely. But to fund all 35, you're millions of dollars. In fact,
And I think the DSS board fully understood that, 35 was not, any kind of reasonable number. But there is tremendous need in almost every area. Energy, of course, I see energy, and occasionally I happen to go through the office when the check comes from DSS, and it is mind-boggling, week after week after week, page after page after page. And then you think about what all had to go in to get that payment for Mr. Mulway. Somebody had to spend hours getting
take the
contacting us.
application, verify the income, check his family numbers, what other aids he gotten.
See, a lot of those programs are fairly simple. That program is probably one of the most simple, because it's just based, a lot of it is on age, your just straight up income.
Household size.
So that's fairly simple, but yet it's a tremendous task to get it done, because everybody has to be communicated with.
And the other thing is, when that program sees, oh gosh, you probably qualify for these programs, food stamps and other assistance, they shift them to them, and that again just extrapolates the client numbers.
And
So-
that is part of the state's and federal government's requirement. When you walk in the door, it's not, you might come in there and say, well, I need some help with my power bill. Well, that's great, but we got to be sure you don't need help with A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. All of that has to be taken into account, and so every category that you are eligible for opens up another door of a whole new set of applications.
Financial services section is in the pay study as well. That's your administrative people at DSS that handle any of the financial side. There are 2 vehicles requested, and 1 is recommended. We, again, do the best we can with those. We are seeing a decrease in the beneficiary programs, but I really want to stress that I was able to easily calculate $1 million, but there was other funds within those other programs that would have taken, that are more hard to identify as one-time, but there's truly a significant amount of one-time beneficiary money in here that could or could not come back. But those are typically one-on-one. They give you money to fund links, it's revenue expense. So we would hopefully, if they do this again, see the revenue to offset the expense other than the client time, which again is tremendous. So
I won't belabor this, but I'll give you a latest one just from this week. I heard it at our board meeting. We've dealt with foster children for years, lots of it. But now we're seeing more and more adult wards that would have to be cared for just like a child. Just this week, an elder was brought to the hospital, dropped off, and his caregiver said, I can't do this anymore. And so DSS immediately had to arrive on the scene and take care of that person until they could find a placement for an adult ward. So it's not a 10-minute process. It's not something that happens easily, and it's just taking more and more time and resources in our community. And we've all got folks that are older in our families, and they're more eligible for all these services.
Next section is economic development. There's a decrease of $1.8 million, but you've got Unix in there with $1 million this year and several others that are doing their big piece this year, and then 1 to 2 years down the road can start their tax incentives. So a good portion of the $1,592,000, you've got $750,000 for occupancy tax, which continues to skyrocket, as we heard Mr. Phillips tell us about the other night. And then the BDI support went up approximately $12,000 for them. Elections is a decrease of $30,705. You did have 2 runs of elections in this year of polling being open, and only 1 in the coming year, hopefully, unless there's some type of special elections on that. So in reviewing it with Debbie, one of the things she'd asked for was $20,000 in additional labor and things in case there was another massive hand count like the state did last year during the presidential, but we don't anticipate that. And if it does, we'll certainly come to you and discuss that as a special thing that we would need to fund for them. Under EMS, you see an increase of $1,046,730. They requested an additional major position, and when they're dealing with 7 bases and over 100 staff members, 18 trucks, the 2 admin they have cannot adequately do that and supervise, even with the 4 captains, 1 on each shift. It's significant, and we feel they need that additional aid to assist with managing the fleet and everything else there to ensure we are in compliance. 8 EMS positions were requested to no longer be required to be paramedics. And the reasoning behind this is you have people that are EMT2 certified, they're just below a paramedic, and they want to work full-time, and they're fine. We can use them because you're only required to have 1 paramedic on a truck, but none of our positions allowed for that. If they weren't willing to get their paramedic, we didn't have a way to hire them. And Director Black wants the opportunity, if it arises. Obviously, our goal is to have all paramedics, but if it arises and you have someone in this circumstance, we want to be able to have a mechanism again to put them in place and keep them, where now we have to turn them away because we don't have a position. And they had one of those recently in the last few months that the gentleman retired from somewhere else and is here, and he's in his 50s. But he's an EMT2. He doesn't want to be a paramedic. He would love to work for us full time. He would be great. He's got great experience, great knowledge, and he could be on a truck with a paramedic. So we would like the opportunity to give them that flexibility to be able to hire a few people that are less than paramedic qualified. Then 2 ambulances, 1 full and 1 remount are recommended. We've been trying to do that every year, and of course the cost keeps going up, which is unfortunate. And even if we do talk about doing some under ARP, I believe we'll still need these 2, and then just do supplemental through ARP. And the standard 2 heart monitors are included. He did request replacement of all their radios to get them up to the 2025 level, and we are working with him on a other minor pot of funding to see if we can work them out under there. We recently received what's called provider relief funds of approximately $152,000. They were given to us by the federal government, another gift that keeps on giving, luckily a smaller one. And what it's for is because we bill out Medicaid, they sent us this money. So, and it's opportunity to do some small things like perhaps these radios, and they wanted a specialized simulation software and things to be able to do some other training in-house, and we're looking at that and verifying if they qualify under it, and hopefully we can put those within that pot of money for them. Finance has an increase of approximately $135,000. A significant portion of that is where we only had a few months of the grant position funded in the current budget. We have the whole one budgeted in the next. The department is in the pay study, and then the grant position. 1 reclass is requested and recommended. What we're finding if we have to fill a position is that the skill level is sought in the market, and it can work from home, can work from wherever. I think Director Scalise has told me his wife works still out of from home for a company in West Virginia. So I've got people that can work from anywhere, and the few times, thankfully, that we see an open position, we can't fill them currently, but we need a higher skilled for this one position. Fire marshal's area is a decrease of 77,000. EMS, emergency services planner, emergency management planner, excuse me, I've got the title wrong, is requested and recommended to be filled at January 1. Just the only reason for the delay is a little bit of cost savings on this position, but in working with Mr. Willis, there is an ungodly number of plans that he has to go through each year. I've got the numbers here in my books, but it's every care home has to be done, every foster home, every group home, every education facility. It's in the probably 400 or 500 plans have to be gone through by him right now. Every year you've got our regular emergency plans, and then you have emergencies that come up, and we are not able to manage all of that at this point in time well. We need to go ahead and get another staff member in and get them evaluating the plans and handling a lot of that portion of things for us. He does have in this year, he's got some one-time grants of $174,000. So that's the reason you kind of see the decrease is you got $174,000 one-time money in this year that you won't have next year. We did include funds to add on the bathroom and a small other piece of his storage building that we've talked about. Not having a facility out there was a concern we heard. He requested a forklift and a commercial-sized washer and dryer. We're recommending a smaller-sized washer and dryer than $10,000 worth of commercial. He did ask for all new computers for the EOC, and we're working with a grant right now, and hopefully that's going to be funded by grant, and if not, we'll work on that. Luckily, most people now have laptops, so when an emergency happens, unless it's really bad, you grab your laptop and go. So we may not even need as many in the future over there. Next department is General Services. Within General Services, there was a request in this area for 2 positions. One position here, and it was not included. This was an additional administrative position. They have 1 admin here and 3 at the Hildebrand office, and obviously they handle the water sewer billing also down at the Hildebrand office, but we felt that was not able to be included this year. 3 of the positions are in the pay study cycle. All of the technical positions were in the first year, I think. Paving at storage building at Marsh Trail, an additional mower and trailer were requested and not recommended. A vehicle for the director is included in this budget increase of $11,000. Under the General Services buildings, there is a decrease, but you have a significant amount of one-time. The EMS-based land purchases in this year's numbers, so that obviously would not be in the next budget. There is a recommendation for $353,000 worth of roof replacements. The Ag, Avery, and Registered Deeds buildings were the most critical, according to Director Delahunt, so those have been included. Obviously, we have more things that could be done if we had unlimited funds, and we really wish we could. Fire panel upgrades are going to give us a more consistent response during a fire. We recently had an unfortunate alarm go off in the Avery building, and we were outside for a while wondering why no one came, and we didn't understand that our building is not under a monitored system, and we should have called 911. So we have worked that out for the future. We now know that and have a plan in place to make sure that a call gets placed. Luckily, there was no fire. It was due to dust getting in a detector. We want to make sure that all our buildings are taken care of. There's some other major building improvements and repairs included as they could, nothing else super large. Control upgrades for all the buildings, UV purification systems, and a lot of other roof repairs and such were not able to be included at these numbers. Again, I have to say, we've all talked about the buildings for several years, and they need a lot of work. Yes, sir.
Did we get the bathrooms for these trash service centers
That's in solid waste.
in solid waste?
Yes, sir. And there is $15,000 in the current budget, and I know they're trying to determine the best way to go with those, and there are, I'll have to look and see how much funds in the coming.
It won't come under this budget.
No, sir. No, sir. This one is governmental buildings. The landfill and solid waste are their own thing. Those buildings stay in those
Because
funds.
it stays over there. Okay, thank you.
Governing board, any other questions there? Okay. Governing board increased to 35,000. There was an additional position requested and not recommended. A pay increase for the commissioners is included, per the request of Chair Mulvey. We did have the consultant evaluate neighboring counties and counties our size and determine that the pay for our commissioners was well under the normal average and tried to bring it closer to that average. We did not come all the way to the average like we do with all other positions. We simply went with the recommendation to bring those to 15,000 a year in salary for your compensation. The health department does have an increase of 157,180. There was one reclassification requested and not recommended. The financial services of this department is in the pay study as well. There were 6 vehicles requested, and 1 was recommended as a replacement in environmental health. 4 of the vehicles were for some positions that do a lot of travel during the day, to go to OB situations, and the other is in their child care division. And when we evaluated the cost of the vehicle, current and ongoing, versus the amount of mileage we're paying out, it seemed more economical to stick with paying the mileage. We hope to look at if there's any good surplus vehicles in any of the other departments this year. We hope to try to shift some there to assist with this, but based on evaluation of how the amount of usage those vehicles would have, we just didn't feel like we could include those 4 vehicles. The 2 replacements in environmental health that were requested, 1 is all we were able to do, but we always will be doing 1 in that department because of the number of staff doing the food and the septic system licensing they have to do, permits.
Why did we not do the reclass?
The position was for an emergency planner in the health department, and that's not a position you typically see in the health department. We felt like it was best suited. That's another reason why the one with emergency services was recommended. That the idea is we're aware we might need an emergency planner, but it seems a better fit to be with emergency services. This position is currently a public health educator position.
And what would that have cost us to redo that?
About $14,000.
I want you to talk to Danny again about that, please.
Commissioner Carswell beat me to the punch on that one. That I was under the impression that that was going to be heavily considered when the hire was made. And so I would say, and obviously the person's qualified, and I would have that conversation again and see if we couldn't make an accommodation for this reclassification. I think it's important. I'm already shorthanded. This person is apparently doing a super job. And so when we do a classification study, it's not always perfect. We try to get it as close as we can, but there are special circumstances. There's a lot that Danny could have asked for. There were some things that obviously he didn't get. There's things that a lot of people didn't get, but we try to, when we talk to, and we talked to a lot of departments, that reclassification was number 1, wasn't, and number 2, I'll bring up as well, is the 4 interns. I would heavily encourage us to use that program. That would not be costly. I'm going to guess it's $28,000, and we could get, and that because they get paid minimum wage for 3 months. They could use 10 interns during the summer, but this is not only good for the health department, it's good for those internships. It's a great program, doesn't cost much in the scheme of things. We've got great qualified kids ready to take advantage of it. And so in this budget, I would urge us to do the reclassification and do the internships.
One of the things we looked at with the interns is we have a significant amount of interns at DSS as well, and we don't pay. We have interns in other departments. My department has one a lot of times, and we don't pay for any of those. Mine is a student from Cullowhee in the finance department that's coming the 31st. None of the departments that have interns are paying for those. So
Did
we're
he
happy.
request pay for these interns?
I'm sorry?
Did Danny request pay for these
Yes.
interns? He did?
Yes.
How much?
It would be 28,000 plus benefits, so about 34,000.
Plus benefits?
No, I don't believe
FICA,
benefits.
you have to pay.
Well, FICA, but
Yeah.
not
Yeah,
traditional
just
benefits.
right, just
But
workers' comp, FICA, and
I'm just saying it's a
Medicare.
program that I think it would benefit us to take a look at and try, in my view. I mean, if y'all disagree.
Certainly. And
But the reclassification is number one. The internships, I just think would behoove us because obviously everyone in that building, we're trying to plug holes and gaps as best as we can. And that is like I said, you get a lot of bang for your buck, for this. The return on investment, I think, would be great. That's just my personal opinion, thoughts. I mean, you can disagree.
Well, the reason for the request, we hear a side, and we know that you heard a side. I want to make sure the two sides are hearing the same
Oh, certainly. Oh, and we're in a different position than just Director Scalise, that we're looking at all the departments that have interns and want to, again, be equitable with employees. So if we're going to pay interns in one department, we would feel that that could cause challenges with all the other interns
Absolutely
in other
could cause
departments,
challenges, yeah.
particularly DSS has a significant amount of interns each year, and now that they've got that second master's, they're excited to take even more. And if we're going to pay the ones at the health department, it would be something we would probably need to look at the ones at the library or anywhere else that has these interns and people. But we're happy to take a look at it.
Well,
I
no,
will
that's
tell you, when
reasonable.
we
I
met
mean-
with Director Scalise, these two items weren't brought up to us. Specific items that he felt like were very important about his budget, but we're happy to talk more about them. And the reclass was something that Ron and I spoke at length about, and then we spoke with the manager, and the concern being that's not typically a position you see in health departments. It's not, the state is willing to look at it for a health department, but it's not normally in health departments. It's outside of there, but we're happy to look at that again and speak with him. And this would be county dollars. There is no state funding for this.
And the internships, you made a good point. We can take a look at that and, not pushing that as much. The reclass, I would encourage you to.
The planner, that was going in emergency management, not emergency, when you say services, I'm thinking EMS. But
All right, that's emergency medical service. EMS is emergency medical services. ES, emergency services, is,
Right.
I get my acronyms mixed up too,
I
but
just want to make sure we're clear that it was going to go with
yeah.
emergency management.
Yeah.
And that's where we're proposing the position.
Right.
And this would be a second emergency management planner that we're talking about in the health department.
Right.
Okay, we're just asking that it merits
No,
a
no,
little
no.
more discussion.
Yes,
That's what we're-
absolutely.
okay.
Absolutely, happy to.
Margaret, help me with that general administration line. Maybe I missed something in the discussion here. The current budget 432, going to 935.
Mm-hmm.
Where's that coming from?
Mm-hmm.
Got that too, yeah.
It doesn't seem like the numbers work, but maybe they do.
There is a funding of $68,000 that is new from the state called Health Advancing Equity. That is, well, they have it currently for $39,000, and next year they're getting an additional $67,980. That is to promote equity in the community, and so that would be just under $30,000 increase. I need to look at that number more thoroughly to answer your question fully. I know they're in the reclass, but that's It may not be the whole thing. I'll be happy to reevaluate that number.
Yeah, please do and let us know on
It
that.
could
That's,
be realigning where some salaries are within programs too, because the department as a whole doesn't have as significant a jump as that, other than the reclasses, but I will definitely relook at that. Okay. All right, human resources is an increase of 43,295. All these positions are in the pay study cycle, and this is where the funds for the new recognition program and event in December would be housed. They have also asked, they had a part-time position that is not going to be filled, and they're looking at some software options to take care of that. We have included the funding for the one software, but we are still in the evaluation stage, so there may be $22,000 in software that's not spent there if we determine that something we've got existing can provide the same functions. So I want you to be aware that's something that's, we've talked to them about. We just don't have, once it came up last month, we don't have time to evaluate the new software quite yet to know.
I'm a stickler for Mrs. Miscellaneous.
Mm-hmm.
Mrs. Miscellaneous got $10,000. What is she?
That's the recognition events and,
Okay,
and,
all right.
and the
Cool.
things.
Can we put a name on it?
I can call it that.
Please, let's put a name on it.
I can put a name there. Yeah. I understand that, and when it gets to a certain point, it's no longer miscellaneous, it's something.
I'd rather it be something than miscellaneous. I just hate that word.
Okay, duly noted. All right, information technology, increase of 231,755. One of the things I want to tell you is that when the budget was submitted at 2.6, which was an increase of approximately 700,000, I spoke to Director Black and I said, you got to help us here. This won't work. And there were some new, some bigger programs and different things that he was hoping to be able to do, replace some servers that were really still running fine, but they were on the normal schedule. We've asked him to put some of those off another year. We asked him, we were looking at some different backup solutions to maybe add where we have internal and then cloud backups, adding another one. We have reevaluated some of those in conjunction with him. The revised budget is something that he has evaluated, what's recommended, and feels that it is very workable. We will still be safe and secure. One of the challenges in this world is that is where our biggest vulnerability is. They can take out your phones, they can take out your computers. We are actually, you'll see the computer equipment, the $6,000 that's recommended is because they're starting to take out radios. This will encrypt our radio signals and provide us with a little more security there so somebody can't hack in and cut off communications on radios. There is a position, he had requested a GIS director. What we found is the 2 staff alone can't keep up with all the mapping changes with as many properties are changing hands and things. And what we've recommended is actually another GIS tech, that you don't need a management position for 2 staff. So we'd rather have just a 3rd staff member in there to help him take care of the maps and what's going on there, because mapping is critical to tax billing. So we have to stay on top of it to make sure our bills go out right with the right properties and right names. Legal services is an increase of $17,000. Everything's out legal and on paper now, and as you're well aware, we really have a lot going on, a lot of different contracts and stuff. Next section is the library, and I've spoken with Mr. Wilson, and he appreciates everything. He had requested a reclassification from for one person it was actually taking them to a different level from part-time to full-time and changing slightly, and then one additional part-time position. And the part-time position is recommended, and it will predominantly take care of that new program that he put in place last year, where we are able to borrow books across the state. He understands the restrictions and is comfortable with his budget. The 24-hour-a-week security he requested for the Morganton Library was not included, and we've really talked to him and are beginning conversations with Morganton Public Safety, request, whatever they can do to help. They're having some challenges with the population around that building. Mental health is recommended the same, and again, this is just like last year, they still have some fund balance of our dollars that were paid out each year that they haven't been able to utilize. We're requesting they continue services at $265,000 with utilizing the $54,000 of funds of ours that they have got already, and spoken with them, and they're comfortable with that. Non-departmental, you will see this is where kind of a catch-all for things that don't apply specifically to one department. This is an increase of $3,000, and a lot of that comes in with retirees. We've got quite a bit more retiring and going into that pool, and then also workers' comp insurance claims is up slightly. You will see included there $110,000. That is, we do not have GPS systems in our county vehicles, and we're working with a couple of different vendors. We want to get those in place for safety. You've got a building inspector out and something happens, or a DSS worker, and they've gone to a house visit that maybe didn't go that well, and we don't know where they last stopped right now. So we want to put this in place to make sure we can know where they're at if something goes wrong and assist them as much as possible. We also have included funds. Our fuel pump system is woefully inadequate and out of date. We've got a couple of tanks that don't even want to work anymore, so we need to revise that system. We need to electrify is not the word, get these things working on computers and things where now a lot of them have to be hand read with a stick.
And where's the location of these tanks at?
You have them at
Sheriff's Office and one?
Sheriff's Office, 4 EMS bases, the landfill.
And we're talking about all of these
Right.
being inadequate, or not as?
Not all the sizes are, but like the pump at the sheriff's office is the original pump that was put in. And so in order to track the actual pump usage, it's a very antiquated system. It's had several breakdowns, and we need a system that we can track what vehicle is truly getting the gas better. Some of that's manual now, and we would like to go to a much more automated system. We have EMS base 2, the tank is down now, and we probably will not be able to put it back online. That's the one at Rutherford College. But because all the ambulances end up in Morganton eventually, they're using Station 7's tank. We have a tank at Glen Alpine and a tank at Hildebrand. I keep looking back because Scott does fuel order. He's done it more than I have, so I can't remember exactly where all the tanks are. The landfill tanks are the ones that have to get up on a thing and read it with a stick every week, and that takes their time to tell us how much has been used so that we know whether to order or not. We need a automated system there, and we've got several tanks that are rust issues and such are becoming a challenge that we don't want an environmental issue. We want to go ahead and make sure what we need to do to do it. We have a separate card system cars can use, and then we have the tank system, and we also are talking to vendors about one system, so a person doesn't have to keep up with a WEX card and a fob and figure out which one I'm supposed to use when, and what's my password for this one, and what's my password for that one. We get a lot of calls, what's my password, or reset it, because I can't get fuel, I'm about out. So we're trying to get that system into the 21st century. Other public safety, you'll see an increase there. This is JCPC, forestry, medical examiner autopsy fees, and then your law enforcement special separation allowance. We're aware there's several retirements coming in the sheriff's office this year, and that number would be going up a good bit for us. Autopsy fees and medical fees continue to rise. And the forestry service had a new replacement vehicle in their request this year. So we should see a decline in that number next year due to the one-time vehicle in there. Recreation is increased $41,960. Most of these positions are in the pay study as well. We have included lights for the Reap Park field. This has been requested multiple years as well, and we really believe this is the year to go ahead and do that. He also had a sod cutter he needs for field work. He had requested a dog park for Reap and to transition an existing basketball court at Parker Road into a pickleball court. That was approximately $7,700. Again, I have spoken with Mr. McGee, and he was excited about his lights and understood about the rest as well. And next is Register of Deeds, increase of $3,280. Register of Deeds Norman had requested a pay increase for her position or for herself based on her educational background, and we did not recommend that. During the pay study, that position is evaluated, and we went with the recommendation in the pay study. However, she's an elected official. You're welcome to determine if something needs to change there. The cost of that was approximately $12,000, $12,400. And then sorry, that was all in that one.
Let me ask you, Margaret,
Yes, sir.
please, how come their staff travel's gone up so much? I mean, for a couple of years was in here at $2,500, and all of a sudden we're up to $6,475.
In speaking with her, she felt like that in those years, 1920 and 2021, are a little bit of a fluke because of COVID, and that she is also serving on, I believe, a state board or regional board, so she'll have additional expense there, she felt like, and then just making sure her staff is as trained as possible.
State board doesn't pay for her travel?
No, sir.
So Margaret, we addressed the salaries for her staff, which is first and foremost, but, Stephanie, it is hard for an elected official to ask for a pay raise, and she has done a fantastic job. After you factor in COLA and some of the stuff that's approved, that pay bump would probably be less than $10,000. And, like I said, pay studies are, fairly accurate, but can't be 100%. So, would that not put her in line with some other counties with the same amount of time that she's got invested? Just saying.
According to the pay study, the position it meets market average. I didn't do that part myself. The consultant does, and
It kind of seems like it's below
this
market.
is, to do with has to do with her. She's asking for her work performance and her education. I'm trying to read real quick. I started at the bottom of I came into this position with a master's in public administration and greater experience than she was given credit for. Of course, elected officials are brought in at the minimum. They're not evaluated on their background normally. That's not factoring elections.
Sure.
So, but certainly, we are at your pleasure, whatever you.
She
believe
did come
needs
in
to-
at the lowest level, and not only her credentials, but actually the work she's done up there and her staff's done, I should say her whole staff's done up there. Creativity they've shown in a lot of the programs, and she's been recognized throughout the state for her work and her staff's work. I think it merits that pay increase she recommended, because she did come in at the low end, and I just think it's, and if you look at the revenue generated, she has generated, percentage-wise, a lot of extra revenue, her and her staff, so I think I obviously support the staff getting those raises, but I support Stephanie getting hers as well. Any thoughts or comments on that, gentlemen? So Commissioner Abley is in agreement?
Margaret, when you say she came in at the low end of the range, help me out here. Where does that range come from? Is this something that's tied to the state?
It's the county's pay plan. That position's on the pay plan, like all other, the sheriff and the register of deeds are two elected positions that are on your pay plan.
So it goes through the same study as everybody else?
Yes, sir. It's evaluated in the same year as department heads. The sheriff's in this cycle as well. So those positions are evaluated the same as any other department head.
Whereas the new sheriff could come in and take an actual pay cut according to the pay plan in some respects.
An elected official
If they've already got
starts
the
at the
rank.
minimum of the
Yes.
pay, and if his pay is above that minimum of sheriff, elected officials come in at the minimum, that's
Which would be a pay
standard.
cut. So that's a, a little bit of a misnomer to me. I would say, like I said, and Commissioner Abley, I think she merits the increase.
Yeah. Certainly when elected officials are brought in, no one on staff is going to evaluate their education and background. They're elected by the community and put into that position at the pay that's put in there, because the fees to run for election obviously are based off the salary and things like that. So it's an advertised salary. We just simply start them at the salary that's advertised in the election.
Sorry.
The only comment I have is, Stephanie is not like I'm sitting over here hiring Kay. Stephanie's not hired. She's elected. So there is a little bit of difference in being an elected. I mean, you run for the job and get it, and she does have the degrees. It does make a difference to me that just like the sheriff, those are elected positions. Those are people we don't sit down and interview and start them at a base pay. To me, that makes a little bit of difference. That's my comment. But I do have another question, Margaret. Under technology services and other purchase services, we got zero in technology. What other service, does the technology go into that 28.2 for other purchase services? Is that what we're buying, or what are we buying with those other purchase services for 28.2?
That is book preservation. That's done out of the automation funds.
Okay.
That's preservation of records there.
They don't need anything on the technology side.
You did not request anything.
All right. But I go back to my comments as far as those couple positions, they're elected. I mean, the people put them in there, so I probably personally don't have a problem with it.
So I think we're okay with the salary request for Stephanie.
Putting it in or taking, what are you telling
Put
me?
it
I'm
in.
sorry.
Put it in.
Okay.
Any other questions, gentlemen, on register of deeds? Being none, we go on to senior services.
Senior services increase $27,845, and this really ties mostly to the COLA and pay plan. Several in that area are in the pay plan, the director, assistant director, site manager, those ones. The sheriff's office is a decrease of $515,000. I want to point out that decrease ties to one-time software of $492,000 in this year, and state funding on some grants and a SCIF allocation of $108,000. So that is where the 515 is predominantly tied to as far as a decrease. Well, it all is tied to there. 5 new positions were requested, 4 patrol and 1 for the civil division office. They were not recommended. The sheriff asked for pay increases. He did not quantify what that might be for all staff. He requested that if you work with a trainee, you receive additional per hour pay, and for the person that schedules the trainees, that they receive additional pay. There were several major operational requests that are included. One of those is there's new required psychological evaluations for all new hires. So we included funding for those. 8 of the 14 vehicles are requested. 8 is what we've been able to do each year, so we continued that 8 replacements. Some of the requests that were not able to be funded included a new sheriff's app, software for additional information that appears might be included in the software we purchased this year for $492,000, and body camera taser program for 5 years for all officers. Any questions there?
Tell us about the officer request again, Mark, the new positions he had asked for.
The officer positions were 4 patrol positions.
Would that be 1 per shift? Is that what that equates to?
Yes, sir. The jail, sheriff's office jail is next.
I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
I was trying to pull some paperwork together here that I had brought with me. I do want to make mention, Mr. Chair and others, of the fact that when Governor Cooper put out his requested budget this year, as far as in the public safety arena, you know, the sheriff has asked a number of times for body cameras, and Governor Cooper has recommended $10 million for body cameras for select counties, those being Tier 1, Tier 2 counties. I hope that county manager and along with us that we make sure that our local representation in Raleigh understands that, you know, being a Tier 1 county, we would certainly like to be part of this $10 million but again, they're going to have to go along with the governor's budget. And I know that they probably don't agree with everything that he's asking for, but I think some of the things that's in there that they need to take a little bit closer look at, that being one of those. We kind of had the indicator that was going to be in this budget, and I know that's one of the things that the sheriff has requested a number of times. So I hope we could be one of those select counties under his proposed plan. He's also asking for $20 million of public safety funding to go to school safety and mental health training for officers. I think we need, again, to let Warren and Hugh know that we would certainly like to be part of that. He has recommended another $1.2 million go to the sheriff's offices to help promote gun safety, gun storage safety and gun locks and things like that. So there are a couple of things in this budget under the public safety that I would just certainly hope that our legislators would take a close look at, that would help supplant some of the things that we're trying to do here, especially when there's the retention problem that Margaret will address when we get to the jail section, and actually some retention problem for the street officers. But I just wanted us to be aware of that and have the county manager maybe forward out a request to Hugh and Warren concerning, you know, that I certainly would support us getting that money if at all possible.
I think that's a good point. I agree with Commissioner Carr as well. I get asked about body cameras, and so do all of us. You know, one of the unexpected expenses, and I can't remember this because it's been a while since we've looked at it, but the storage fees for the footage, you know, your recurring cost, you know, there's one thing to pay the upfront, which would be great if we could get some monies from the state to do so, but we also are making that commitment, and I can't remember, it was pretty substantial.
The cameras aren't that expensive, it's the storage.
It's the storage that is the most substantial piece of the puzzle. You know, I tell people that they don't think about that, but that is a real cost that you're committing to that is, I don't want to stick numbers out there. I kind of got
That's
a
what
number in
I'm
my
trying
head,
to
but I
remember
think it's a
myself.
shocking number, and I don't want it
Right.
without me going in and check,
Right.
but it's quite substantial.
It was a tremendous amount, but there's a new plan out now from the companies, if they say the camera, that they're gonna have to have a way for you to help defray the cost of the storage. So I don't think it's gonna be as much as it was when we originally heard this, but still, if we got monies out there for Tier 1, I hope our grants person and others, whatever it is, that we
I
take
will
a
give that to her.
long, hard look at that one. Okay?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely good points.
The sheriff did request the Smith-Rogers additional legal contract again out of the restricted funds, as we've been funding it for the last 2 years. So that is recommended in a different section, not here. I just wanted to mention that the Smith-Rogers legal contract was requested as part of the budget process and will be funded out of those same restricted funds as it has been. Under the jail, it's an increase of approximately $300,000, $299,699. The continuation of that lieutenant position that you had approved but was due to expire June 30th of 22 is requested that be continued. It was not recommended by staff. We will leave that to your discretion since you put a deadline on it. Again, pay increases for all staff was requested without a specific number and was not recommended at this time. They have had increases in the last several times to try to address the retention. The primary request of reason for the increase will tie to the psychic valves because they're required to do them as well, per stat new hire that they process. They also have increased medical cost and food cost. There's a few building equipment service agreements went up somewhat, and that is where the significant increase. This does include the 4% COLA, and the sheriff's office does, of course, as well. These two departments were already paying overtime, the floating holidays in these two, but as I said, that really isn't an increase itself. Some of the requests that were not recommended include that whole body scanner, infrared camera, and scanner system. They wanted more dual band radios within the building and a specialized electronic medical record software. There was a request made by the sheriff that no bed rental revenue be included in our budget until they are fully staffed and trained, which that's a decrease over the current year of a little over $500,000. And that, of course, was funded to assist with the additional positions and the additional jail expenses.
And Margaret, anytime that you want to, if you need a break, because we're sitting down, you're not, let me know if you need a break, or if you decide you would like to sit. Actually, we could bring a chair up and you sit right there, and we could move the mic. Actually, we can bring your regular chair up.
I'm okay.
Try to make you a little more comfortable, because I'm feeling awful.
Sorry.
Because I know this is a lot of information to go over, but just want to make sure you're comfortable. If you're
Thank
not,
you.
we'll reassess.
Scott got me some water when I begged him, so I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, if you want that chair and we can move the microphone, we'll be glad to do that.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. I don't know how long y'all want to listen to me, so I'm going as long as you are. Soil and water is an increase of 8 ton.
Mr. Chairman, I want to make one more comment before
All right.
you move away from the sheriff's office. And I just want to say this. We have said it every year that we sit here. If we can convince the sheriff to start putting inmates in that jail, we build it with the intent for it to pay for itself. And I notice he's not saying anything about doing bed rentals in there. We can pay for this jail every penny every year if we just rent out those beds. I just want to make sure that we understand that we're doing everything we can from our side to supply this. I know he has a hiring and a retention problem, and we will address that in some manner, shape, or form as we move forward, after today. Don't know what the answer to that one is yet, but when we get to that point, we start putting those beds in there. What irritates me, as I said in the state meetings, and I listen to all these sheriffs making deals with their commissioners that are renting out beds, and they'll say, the sheriff says, if you'll give me 20% of the money that I rent out and you take the other 80%, and they allow the sheriff to do what he wants to with his money, buy whatever equipment he needs. And it's working out in a lot of counties that the sheriffs are doing this, and they're renting out these beds daily. And we still have that opportunity here in this county. So I hope we can get to the point where we start renting out these beds and we can do more here than what we're actually doing. And along with the other things, like I say, with the other things that are coming through with the state. I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well said. Thank you.
Soil and water is an increase of $18,865. Both those staff members were in the pay study. That and the 4% COLA are really the increase there. Leanne is very conservative in her request, and I appreciate that, as you do, I'm sure. Tax, you've got an increase of $24,000 overall. Of course, we're in the last part of the revow. The tax assessor collection area is up. That's going to tie to some costs on the VTS billing. The state continues to raise those fees for the required collection of the taxes within the tag renewals, and we have a budgeted for that increase. Also, some of their software went up somewhat. There is another vehicle in there. That is for the new position we added last year, and we did not provide a vehicle last year for it, knowing they would be in training most of that year. So this would provide a vehicle for that position. The tax revow section itself, you'll see that to continue funding the listed measure with the outside company, And also, we are working with that company to potentially transition perhaps from residential to, we monitor closely. I know Commissioner Britton asked about it at the time. How are we going to know if we're seeing enough to make sure this contract's worth its while? And we are feeling comfortable that our appraisers have done a great job in the last several years, so they are not finding as much as we might have thought they would. So we are really watching closely, and we'll be bringing you a amendment to their contract to transition them away from residential into the commercial side. We had a retirement, and a staff member, as you know, the tax administrator retired, as did the director of the property revaluation section, and that were our specialists in commercial. So it has left a small gap there that we want to make sure that we address the commercial properties for the revaluation due January 1st. So we feel that's more critical at this time than continuing the list and measure that might not be getting us much return on our investment. So we're working to bring you the details of the contract revision there. Transfers to other funds is a decrease. Of course, a lot of these numbers, the $250,000 to the schools, the sales tax is part of the required negotiated contracted amount, and it all varies depending on how much sales tax comes in. The transfer to Fund 215, that's your trails projects, 50,000 is recommended. Water, sewer, we talked about trying to figure out a way to help fund capital there, and this 250 would be transferred to set aside to make sure for the future we've got some funds for these projects that we need to make sure we're doing. A solid waste fund, the 350,000 is to simply fund their needs as recommended. So if you change their recommendations, it would also increase the expenditures in general fund. Transportation requests an increase of $230. That is Greenway Transportation, that we're a member of that regional group. Veteran Services, an increase of $7,540, predominantly tied to the pay plan recommendations and the 4% COLA there. The Western Piedmont Community College, it's a decrease of $1 million because of the one-time capital allocated in the current year. They did request an increase of $144,725 for operational increases, mostly tied to cost of living increases that they feel might be coming from the state. Staff had recommended them funding it from the county held funds from prior years of $881,000. I did speak to Sandy Holman with Western Piedmont yesterday, and she wanted me to talk about perhaps could we look at just doing the cost of the portion that was staff tied within their request, which is approximately $56,000. That would be a huge help to them to be able to have us put that back instead of them using fund balance.
And this is something Margaret, you and I talked about, and I talked to Dr. Welch yesterday. You know, and we asked them, and I asked them to peel that part out, that 56,000, and I'm glad you got the number because I printed it at the office and promptly walked off without it. But that being said, that was a state recommended COLA, and but it's an unfunded amount, which we all love, and so that is when we're it's on the county's responsibility, and to be fair to the county funded portion versus the state funded folks, we need to be equitable here, and I think this is a really good way to be equitable and give them the COLA and fund that, and like I said, it's not a flipping amount, but still it's a feasible amount of $56,000. So I would highly recommend we do that. Any thoughts? Are y'all fine with that? Commissioner Abe, this fine? Commissioner Britton, Commissioner Carswell? All right.
56,000 will be added to that. Okay, that brings us to our other, that's all of general fund. Brings us to the two sales tax funds, which, as we've talked about, sales tax continues to go up, and that is reflected within these funds as well, having an increase between the two funds of $1,151,000. These are the funds held for the school system. The emergency telephone surcharge fund is decreased, but that's tied to that new software. We had all that one-time software for the complete revamp in the current year. The state has said that our funding will be $446,940 in the coming year. That's based off that 5-year average of allowable expenses in that. The trail projects, they would like to build the trailhead at Harris Wisnut, which is being quoted at somewhere between 20 and 22,000. They also wanted to have some other funds for perhaps some more kiosks and other minor changes and improvements at the trail and things. So they had requested 64, and it's recommended at 50,000. That gives them 28,000 for unknown and coming possible things above the trailhead. All right, that brings us to our last two funds, water, sewer, and solid waste. Water sewer fund is a decrease of $191,368. A lot of that's tied to the fact that you had land transfer, part of that land purchase was in here, so it's one time. The $275,000 is not in the coming budget. Rate increases are included to try to provide an additional $79,400 in additional revenues. Scott Cook and Mark Delahunt spent a great deal of time looking at the rates, trying to figure out in this economic situation we're in with inflation, what do? We need funds to cover the expenditures, but we did not want to recommend a significant increase to these funds. In looking at what it would need to be, when you look at the rate, it's currently $5.80 a gallon. And in order to get it to be cost neutral, you would need it to be $12 is the way I estimate it out. So we obviously aren't talking about anything like that. When we get to the next agenda item, it's on the fee increases, and we looked at a modest increase there, and that's providing $79,000. We absolutely recommend a rate study and have our grant person looking hard for an opportunity to fund it outside of our dollars, but if not, we'll need to fund it in our dollars in the coming year, and we'll determine how that might happen. But we definitely need to figure out how to proceed to build a rate that's structured that's fair and reasonable. Yes, sir. I see the question. I'll just stop. Just what it would take to fund this year's request. As you can see, the request was about $1.1 million over last year's current budget, and it's all important needs. Absolutely. Mr. Delahunt's done a job trying to come up with the numbers, and there's a lot of needs out there that we just weren't able to fund. Their fund balance is being used at $154,000 to balance this budget, which pretty much will wipe that out unless we roll some in this year, which I don't necessarily anticipate, but that was the way to get this to work this year. Funding for a tractor, bush hog, and a road boring tool are included. $427,000 for general maintenance and repairs, along with the debt service that's required of $236,435 are all included in the recommended budget. Funds for a new office will need to be budgeted when that cost is determined, and will likely have to come from general fund. Once we know what that new offices at East Burke will be, we'll have that brought to you separately for approval, because there's no way to fund that in this budget as it stands. Expenditures include for the staff the 4% COLA. They already received overtime in this department. So a request was made to put in meters for all of the sewer in the Hildebrand area. We funded a portion of that and hope that it can be put in over a period of years instead of $500,000 at once. The hope is that that might generate some revenue as well, because there may be a gap there. Solid waste fund, that's a decrease of, I'm sorry, any questions on water? Other questions?
Target on M&R water and sewer system, 670 versus 325. Remind me again what that is.
That's those 500,000.
That's the 500,000. Okay, just want to make sure.
Yeah. So we went from 146 to 325. Currently, only 146 is budgeted, 146,000, so we've more than doubled that number to try to give them some more money for that M&R and what's needed there.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Solid Waste Fund is a decrease of $248,989. Now, again, keep in mind that you've transferred money for $400,000 piece of equipment this year, I believe, and $366,000, excuse me, and then also the purchase of that property. So those are things that won't be in the future, so that's why there is a decrease. So we are having to use general fund again to meet any of the needs of the recommended needs in this department. The rate increase that is proposed will provide an estimated $200,000 in additional revenues. However, you would likely have to take the current $76 per household yearly fee up to about $96, and then take the per tonnage that's currently 73 up to 110 for commercial, and the construction demo that's at 40 to something at around $56 to actually fund operations and a lot of the capital needs there. So again, I want you to understand we need significant rate study information to really come up with how we build a structured rate and operations to adequately take care of solid waste in this county. A position for a full-time position to work with, trash collections and potentially supervise the community service workers was requested and not recommended in here due to the funding challenges we're already seeing with that. There is a loader included, and the light bulb crusher that you guys heard about and we're seeing very excited about are both included in this recommended budget. That's $305,000. A grappling rake for the John Deere and a hydro seeder and a commercial mower were requested and not recommended, just trying to prioritize and get the needs. The transfer station loader seemed to be important based on the condition of the current. Funds for the creation of the East Burke and Jones River convenience sites were requested at just over $1 million apiece. However, we truly don't know that cost. We haven't done any estimates or had bids put out, so we want to wait and come back to you when we have a true cost and not an estimated number in case it's up or down. From that, we'd rather come with an actual and request funds, and those will likely, of course, have to come from general fund again. So that would be, depending on the cost of those, somewhere between this and the water sewer needs, you could be looking at anywhere up to $2.5 million that would have to come from general fund to finish those 2 container sites and the offices at East Burke based on the estimates that Mark has come up with. Okay, that concludes my narrative on the budget. Anything you want to talk about? Anything else?
Margaret, that was an impressive run there, I will tell you. Are you still fine going forward? Because I know this is...
That's up to you.
This
Hey.
is...
The next 2 might be a bit quicker, depends on what questions you have, but
Well, we can move on then to
Okay.
proposed fee changes then.
proposed fee changes, looks like a lot, but what it is in the fire marshal section, we have not looked at those fees thoroughly since 2002, 2003. So it was time to really evaluate those, and there's some fees we haven't been charging that we really need to be charging. And so Mr. Willis worked diligently on these, and we have these. Some of them are small, going from $10 to $20. Some might be a little more significant. All in all, with these raises, we are probably talking about somewhere in the neighborhood of only $2,000 in revenue. It is not a massive revenue generator or impact to the community, and it is more of an impact to those who may be violating the rules anyhow. Foothills Higher Ed, the proposal came to increase the rental rates there. We feel that with the increase in costs for the custodial service, the supplies for the rooms, and the staff, it was warranted. The library is proposing to take out fees on past due books and paying to use the computers. And a lot of this comes from, that's a statewide trend. And what actually goes along with this trend, although you lose some revenue, your books come back. Right now, what's happening statewide is you're a family with 3 small children and you go, and the next thing you know, your books are behind. So then you're embarrassed and you don't come back for a long time, and then you're up to $5, $10, $20 worth of past due fees that you don't have. And so your children are not able to take advantage of our programs and our opportunities. And Mr. Wilson and I talked a lot about this, and it's based on the information he showed me statewide. I really feel like this is an important fee change that we need to look at. It is it is an impact to the budget, however, not as significant as you might think when we're looking at also getting supplies back that we're now not getting because those people never return.
I've actually read or listened to or both. It's been several years ago, some of the larger cities that were implementing this, so I'm glad to see it.
Building inspections, changing their multiplier for permits for residential and commercial, and also looking at the type of cost construction. That is that large chart we bring you each year, and one thing we're proposing that instead of having to bring that chart where you go here and here back and you look at it each time, we want to just have it approved that it's whatever chart is in place at July 1st of the year, that we would go with that chart instead of bringing it back and individually each year. Planning and zoning, they just asked that the expense be renamed from reinspection callback fee to resubmittal reinspection or callback fee. So solid waste, what we're looking at is going from $76 a year to $82. So a household would see an impact of $6 a year. So 50 cents a month. We didn't go up any farther than that, again, because of everything else going on in the economy. Homes with the qualified reduced rate would be at $41, and you see the rest of the per tonnage changes. Again, some such as wooden pallets is 25-cent change, and they go up from there, trying to account for some of the costs of these items. The water section, what we're looking at here is a fee increase, but also a slight change to the process. We'd like to take the basic monthly service fee from $25 down to $20, but instead of you getting 4,000 free gallons included in that, you would start paying per 1,000 gallons. And this would be at $6 a gallon. So for the gallons above 4,000, that's a 20-cent per gallon, 1,000-gallon increase. The ones below that would be $1.35, but you'd lose the $5. So that would net out somewhat close. The tap and meter fees are changing from having one fee for the tap and one for the meter, because you got to have both, to one fee together. And the increase accounts for the cost of that metal increase and the supply increase on those. There are a meter reinstall fee that has to do with having to call out staff and trying to really keep people from tampering with the meters, hopefully, and putting that cost in place. Mark had requested confirming reader fee and the 90-day data log report fee. There are very few of those that happen, and taking out those fees. Leak adjustment process, request is to change that from how it's done now to computed large formula to a simple reduction of the $2 per gallon less the cost of the 12-month average gallons used. The sewer section would be the same as far as taking the $25 down to $20 and just starting at $6 a gallon instead of $5.80, so 20-cent a gallon increase. Unauthorized taps would go from $2,000 to $2,500, and the late fee, and this is on water and sewer as well, that late fee would go from $10 minimum to flat 10%. And the reason behind that is you may have a $3 bill and the minimum late fee is $10. It's kind of inequitable. We'd rather just go to a flat 10% on those. Those are the proposed fee changes. Any questions, comments?
Margaret, what is the projected increase or decrease in the way you've changed the rate structure reducing the basic facilities charge, increasing the, or starting the usage fee at 1,000 gallons. Are you anticipating some percent increase or neutrality or what?
Overall, we feel it will be a $79,000 increase in revenues in water sewer.
So do you have a projected average percent increase on the average bill?
I apologize, I'm gonna have to ask Scott. He worked on these for days, for me, so really took the spearhead on that. What is the average increase you think it might be on a bill?
It's gonna, I don't know, I have to divide out by people, it's gonna hit the, it's basically flat or a little bit lower if you're under the 4,000, which is most of the bills, the majority of the bills for the water and the sewer. But the higher usage, customers will have, will get that higher, will get the increases because they're going to get the higher amount per gallon. So the increase of the 79,000 is coming from the higher usage customers. And you know, I ran like a sample thing on like a $3,000 gallon customer, and they came out slightly better on both the water and the sewer with the new tier. But we still get the increase in revenue from the higher customers.
Any other questions? All right, Margaret, thank you very much. Guess that can move us on to paid and classification statement.
So,
Last one.
the last one. So this was, again, the cycle 2, 6 years in. This is year 3. This is the last of it. And before we kind of get into it, I do want to say that we feel that this has been an amazing process, but what we've seen in the second cycle is predominantly you didn't see near the shift you did the first 3 years. The first 3-year cycle was where we were playing catch up from years and years. This time you're only back 3 years. Really. Now, you saw some market changes. Some of these moved more significantly than others, and that does relate to the market, what those positions have done in the last 3 years. You see a lot more this time with no change, and that's great because that means we're staying with the market average. We're okay. What changes you made last time. We would recommend that this process itself not be continued for another cycle, but that in the coming year we look at doing what's called a CompuRatio study. And what that would do is we would ask David Hill's group to look at where should a person who's in their position for 5 years be in our pay, in the pay grade, and try to put people where they should be if they've been here. Some department heads will come and request, if they hire a person with a master's degree, for an increase when they're started. But a lot of departments have never done that. They start them at the minimum no matter what. And at the time they were hired, the market was out there to say, I'm going to take the job like it is. Well, we want to make sure, go back now, we've realized that we have people that probably ought to be, with the number of years they've got, at the midpoint in our pay, and they're not. This is a way to decompress that and try to put people in the appropriate place in the pay plan is what we would like to do going forward. Under this, you have the changes per area. It was the 911 telecommunicators and 911 management operations, community development, planning inspections, code enforcement occupations, finance, accounting, support occupations in all departments, senior center and veteran services, library, election tax office, soil and water, parks and rec occupations, and department heads and assistant department heads. I think the note didn't say assistant, but they were in the department head piece of that for the ones that didn't fit somewhere else. This budgetary effect for the pay plan, including benefits, is approximately $388,000 to $90,000, and it is included in all those budget numbers we've already talked about. I can go over each of these if you'd like, but you've probably listened to me long enough. Is there any that you have particular questions about? Anything you want us to explain, discuss, review?
Why would the new process be so much better than what we've been doing?
Because what we've done is simply look at minimums.
Okay,
minimum, is the minimum of that pay range, the minimum of what's there, correct to market?
Versus,
But,
minimum versus what current market is.
yes.
Okay.
Yes. What we've not done is address the fact that as we move the pay plan up, we're not always able to recognize, like I said, that if you've been here, and Lorena, tell me if I'm doing wrong. She's still back there. There she is. Okay. If you've been here for 15 years in the same position, you should really be at the midpoint at a minimum. If you started at minimum, you should be at midpoint. We have many people that aren't. And that can be because we weren't able to do COLAs one year, or it could be that they were under hired potentially when they started. And this new study would look and say, you had this experience when you were hired, and we didn't acknowledge that. Again, it's simply where a change in, a difference in hiring philosophies within departments and department
Okay,
heads.
we talk about philosophy, so if I go back to the state, when I came in at base, I never did, even till I retired, I never did make it to midpoint. So what we're saying with this plan, we actually could bring people to midpoint, and maybe at the end of their career, they will be at top. Okay, I can love that. That would take care of some retention issues.
Absolutely.
If people would realize that in a 30-year career at 15, if they actually did make it to the midpoint, and then towards the end of getting close to retirement time, they were at the top of the scale. Okay, and that's called what kind of program?
Yeah, we were talking earlier about registered deeds with Stephanie Norman. I think that's a perfect example of this, where the pay plan has been, the pay studies have been looking at what should the minimum of the salary ranges for each position be. And they're comparing it to neighboring counties. Counties are our size of population. And they're asking us to adjust our salary ranges minimum, the minimum of the salary range, making sure it's market competitive. It doesn't look at an individual and say this individual has 20 years of work experience. It doesn't look at a person and say that's what's market average for that individual based on their experience. You're only looking at what's correct for the salary minimum of the salary range. Does that make sense? Where a compa ratio, as she's saying, and I certainly support this, is you look at an individual based on how many total years of very directly related experience and where they should be in that salary range. And the same philosophy she's talking about is how many years, you know, some organizations are very aggressive and say you should be at midpoint at 8 years. Some are very conservative, saying 15, probably the average is 10 or something like that. But it has a percent toward midpoint that people should be based on years of directly related work experience in that range. Keeps a county, keeps an organization at market competitive, so people don't have to leave to an organization that'll pay them fair market value for their years of experience and their backgrounds.
So we've done a pretty good job over the last 6 years implementing this, which had never been done. And obviously, we're making a $388,000 commitment again. We made these substantial commitments for the last 6 years, but now we're going to really we got to a place where we raised all ships to a certain point, but now we can really customize the menu per individual. And that's what's.
My own opinion, it also limits the amount of people running and asking for exceptions for adjustments to stay market competitive if you're already using a compa ratio model to keep them there.
Any other questions, gentlemen? Comments? Well, Margaret,
Yes, sir.
it's a great run.
Thank you.
Did a fantastic job, you and your team. Want to thank everybody. County Manager, would you like to make any comments before I let Margaret go?
Well, they've done a great job, and y'all have weathered all this very well because it is a lot to take in a short period of time. I would want to go back on about sales tax. And as y'all know, that the hospital is getting ready to build a large addition onto their building And if those materials are bought in Burke County, at some point in time, it's going to look like our sales tax went up, but they're going to get that money back at some point in time. So that's another thing to keep in mind about the sales tax.
We do track that, yes. And if I may indulge for just a moment as well,
Yes,
if you
ma'am.
don't care, I can't say enough about the staff and what they've done to help me. All the department heads and their administrative people when we needed things, even in the last few days when we were crunching some numbers and trying to fine tune some things. You know, we always want a balanced budget, and I'd love to do it with no fund balance, but obviously we're not quite there yet, and we certainly didn't want to come to you with any kind of tax increase with the economy the way it is. But everybody was really good to react and jump, and I have staff running numbers and doing things in the background that make me look awesome, and I appreciate them, and want to point out Scott and Jessica Helms and how much they did to assist with this process particularly. We couldn't bring this to you without a team doing it. And again, departments that, Mr. Delhunt, get me this number. He got me one today earlier that I'm going to massage something to make sure we're okay. And we're every day working on this, I promise you.
Well, we understand that it's how many hours that are done behind the scenes. It's so much appreciated. And, you know, we recognize in the perfect world we wouldn't have to take out a general fund, but because we have been very prudent in the last 5 years with our finances, we have the ability to fund things that we didn't have the ability to fund 5 years ago. And so I'm proud of that fact, that we were able to do a lot of these things and reward our folks, which is our top priority for good work, and get you the correct equipment and doing the things that we want to do. And moving forward, we're positioned to do that as well. So, like I said, I think you've followed our guidance. And any other comments, gentlemen, before?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just, again, Margaret, you and your staff, I give you, I appreciate everything that you've done. We got some challenges that are going to face us as we move forward in this budget process this year. As we went through and we talked about DSS, you know, approaching a $20 million mark, and we hear what we hear from Commissioner Britton about all these people that are in the system up there. It's going to be a huge challenge for us to try to take on as we move forward to next year. Sheriff's Office, how we're going to get into the retention of officers and what we need to do there. Again, I hope we follow again some of the recommendations that was made by Governor Cooper. I hope our General Assembly will. I know they won't accommodate everything he says. I mean, it's obvious they won't, but there's concessions that have to be made. Some of those things are good to help us out in the Medicaid process too. The governor made some fairly good recommendations. He's conceded a lot, so I hope our General Assembly, our representatives, I hope they take a long, hard look at some of the things that he has said. So we got some great challenges. I go back, I know I'm mentally disturbed, and I know we went through a number of general services managers over the year, but I thought we had actually tackled water sewer. Obviously, we didn't tackle it enough. I'm glad Mr. Delahant is working with us now. I hope you can sign a piece of paper that you'll stay more than 3 years, stay a little bit longer, and so we can actually come up. Water sewer bothers me, you know. We got candidates out there in this last election said they're going to run water sewer to every house in Burke County and broadband and a chicken in every pot, you know. So it's obvious that we got a hellacious problem in water and sewer that Mark, you're going to have to tackle and come back to us with, and if we have to go to the outside entity to find out what we need to do. And we've talked about it ever since Brian came. Remember, we said, are we going to stay in the water and sewer business? I don't know that we've made that decision yet. And we need to make a decision. Are we going to stay in the water sewer business? If we are, let's do the darn thing right. Let's do what it is that we need to do. We need, you know, I don't want to charge people, I don't want to go up to $20 for paying $8, you know, but we can't give this stuff away. We have to pay for it. So it's another challenge for us as commissioners as we move forward. Reval coming up next year. Our neighbor Caldwell just finished their reval, and it averaged out about 17.6%. They had, it went as low as 5, and it went up to high as 32, 33%. 17.6, that's not bad in this year that they're doing that, because since March 2020 to March 2022, housing has gone up 45%. That's a lot. So at a 17.6, Caldwell will bring in somewhere between $4 and $5 million more in their tax base. So as we move into our reval next year, I would encourage you as commissioners to take a look at the North Carolina Department of Revenue SAR report, the sales assessment ratio report that tells you what property tax appraisals are versus the actual sales price. We need to educate ourselves a little bit better as we move into this with the new tax assessor, as we move into this process next year to decide what we want to take a look at. It's a guesstimation, obviously, and like I say, again, the federal government mandates and dictates a lot of this false prophesying that they do about inflation. I have mixed emotions whether it's real or whether it's they want us to think it's real. So and we have to base our numbers and what we want to do based on what they're telling us, and that's a hard game to play. But I think your staff's done an excellent job of that. I think our department heads have done an excellent job when they come in. They didn't get everything they asked for, but I think we did a really good job of supplying what we need. There's wants, but we supplied the needs. And I hope the citizens of the county know that there are a number of counties in this state that actually are thinking about doing tax increases this year. Fortunately, we're not going to have to do that because we positioned ourselves many years ago. We positioned ourselves, and we've taken care of our bank account, and we've taken care to make sure people have what they need to do their jobs the way that it should be done and provide the services in this county the way that it should be. Businesses are still moving here. As we heard the reports last week, I'm still not convinced. I'm still convinced that people are moving here. I don't agree with the numbers. I mean, you don't have a housing shortage without people being here. So the numbers that have been thrown at us, I still think we're in 90-some thousand, 91,000, 92,000 as far as population goes, even with our undocumented population. So we still have to treat those people. And again, I think the things that scare me is the DSS and the health department, what we're having to provide up there, providing law enforcement services, those things that we have to provide. I think the one thing I was impressed today about was the volunteerism. Whenever we heard about fire departments, these guys told us some great stories about their volunteers. People are still out there volunteering. It's tough on them, but they still are running their fire departments out there the way they should be run. So I was pleased to hear that. Overall, I think we've had just a great day, and I appreciate everything you did. And Mr. Chairman, thank you for allowing me to rant for a while.
Oh, no rant. Very good information. Appreciate the comments. Mr. Britton? All right. Well, your feet are tired, so I know if I could allow you, I'd let you make the motion to adjourn. But anybody else? Okay. Kay, are we missing anything at this point? I think we can wrap this up, gentlemen. I'll accept a motion to adjourn. Second? All those in favor signify with uplifted hand. Thank you very much.